Hello, everyone, and between July of 2022 and December of 2023, I released 4 videos going over how I would have made the DCEU. And a lot of you enjoyed that series, and in there, some movies had stayed the same from the original DCEU, some had minor retoolings, and most were entirely original ideas. I have never stopped working on this entire fanfiction, just kind of in the background, in between all the projects, streams, everything going on the channel. I have silently been continually working and editing this entire saga. So in true superhero movie fashion, I have revived this series with new updates and reshufflings and really updating this saga to be as perfect as it can. So I'll also be including all 4 phases in this entire video. If you want to skip to those movies and the rest of this intro, go ahead and click to this point in the video. For those of you who are going to stick around, I'm going to go and give a little extra background to why I even made this in the first place. For those of you who are still here, the reason I made this fanfiction is out of frustration. After Birds of Prey, Longest Name Ever came out, I was entertained and I even enjoyed the movie, but I like to call that movie empty calories. There's no reason for the movie to exist, and it didn't really connect with the rest of the universe. It was just kind of there. And so when something isn't done the way you like it, you sit down and you do it yourself. That very next weekend, I actually hammered out the entirety of the first phase, which is mostly, if not entirely, unchanged to today, by the way, and a rough second phase. And over time have really polished this into what it is today. When I started putting this together, I consider this to be a retooling of the existing DCEU. So it still starts off with a version of Man of Steel in 2013, keeping a lot of the same castings, plots, and general direction. It then developed a lot of original ideas that I feel like helps give this fanfiction its own identity. The last couple things I will mention here is that there are some pre-existing heroes before Superman, despite Superman being the first movie. And that list of heroes is including, but not limited to, Batman, Dick Grayson's Robin, Wonder Woman, Ted Kord's Blue Beetle, Starfire, Beast Boy, Cyborg and Raven, John Constantine, and Zatanna Zatara. So Superman in this universe becomes the first publicly global superhero. With all those notes out of the way, why don't we go in and dive on in to movie 1 of phase 1. So Superman is going to be mostly unchanged, or Man of Steel, if you will. I am altering the title, so it's Superman, Man of Steel, or Superman the Man of Steel. So it's going to be mostly the same movie. The only thing that I'm really going to be looking at clarifying or even changing is in the intro scene when you're on Krypton. I want it to be known that this is taking place in Kryptonopolis, that city. Kandor is currently being stolen by Brainiac, and we will not see the city get taken outside of any reports from Kandor. And there would be a line mentioning that Kara Zor-El is missing and that her family, the Zor-Els, are in Argo City. So Kandor is being stolen, the Zor-Els are in Argo City, and the Els are in Kryptonopolis during the events of the opening of Man of Steel. So this is all just keeping roll and a lot of events that we'll come back to in a later movie. With all that being said, I would probably focus a little bit more on the optimism of Superman instead of having it be so dark and so gritty all the time. Have it be a bit more optimistic in terms of tone. Keep the General Zod, story, him as a villain. It really is just like a tone retooling and just fixing up that intro scene. That's really the only differences I'm making for Superman, Man of Steel. The next movie is going to be Wonder Woman, released in 2014, and this is going to be exactly how we received 2017's Wonder Woman. The only change I'm making is that I am recasting Steve Trevor. I have plans for Chris Pine, so I don't have a recasting, so take your pick of whoever is not in the description. I'll have the entire casting list for this entire saga listed there. In 2015, I do my Batman movie, and I wanted to do the first 3 movies in this order because I wanted to do the DC Trinity, Superman, Wonder Woman, and Batman. The reason I did this order is because it makes sense to start off the universe with a character like Superman. He's the first modern superhero. And I wanted to do Batman last because this would put as much distance between this Batman movie and the Nolan trilogy while still having no blank year in the DCEU. In the real DCEU, of course, we had Man of Steel in 2013 and not another project until 2016 with BVS and Suicide Squad. Imagine if Marvel did like Iron Man and then did nothing for 2 years and then came out with Civil War and then Guardians of the Galaxy. I wanted to at least not have any blank years unless it was for a very deliberate reason. And this put as much distance between the Nolan trilogy and this version of Batman. And if you say that this is still too early, this is the exact same amount of time between The Amazing Spider-Man 2 and Spider-Man Homecoming. And technically, we had Tom Holland's Spider-Man a year even before Homecoming. So I think that 3 years is perfect amount of time. So in terms of story for this Batman movie, Bruce is in between Robins after Dick Grayson leaves to become Nightwing. He will not make an appearance, Dick Grayson, in this movie. And the movie opens with a battle between Bruce and the Joker. In my original video, I mentioned that Jared Leto is casted as my Joker. At the end of the day, this is just a fan fiction. Picture who you want. But for the sake of this being fun and a bit more less tied to reality and deeping more into the fact that this is fake, let's do just a fun casting and say, I don't know, Willem Dafoe. And so after Joker is defeated, he is taken to Arkham and put under the care of a Dr. Harleen Quinzel. Yes, as a matter of fact, if this is an origin for anybody in this movie, it is for Harley Quinn. And while a new villain who is going to be the main marketed villain for this movie, it is going to be Deadshot, not played by Will Smith. We're not having the Fresh Prince in this universe. It's going to be played by Jackie Earle Haley. And so while Deadshot is rampaging through Gotham and Batman goes to stop him, Harley Quinn and Joker end up doing their thing and Joker ends up turning her. And similar in sense that like in The Dark Knight you had the Batman and Joker as the true climax, and then there was still the, like, for lack of a better word, epilogial climax between Batman and Two-Face with the Gordon family. I'll do something similar here. Maybe not as big in scope, but similar in concept, where the true climax of the movie will be against Deadshot, but the finale is going to really be with Joker, Harley, and Batman. And Harley will help Joker escape Arkham. She herself will get locked up along with Deadshot. And that is where the movie is going to end until we get to our 2 post-credit scenes. The first of which is going to be Amanda Waller and or Rick Flag coming in to recruit Deadshot for the Suicide Squad. The second post-credit scene is going to be after the climactic fight between Joker and Harley Quinn, is that when Bruce is walking back to the Batmobile as Batman, the tires of it are being stripped by a young teenager. This, of course, being Jason Todd. Now, closing out 2015, I have a second movie where it's going to be a bit more upbeat, it's a little bit more optimistic, because we just had a, Batman movie. Let's go in and put in a little bit of a palate cleanser, and that is going to be Flash. And we're actually not going to do what Hollywood thinks is the only Flash story, which is Flashpoint. No. We're going to do a more Spider-Man Homecoming style Flash movie. It's not going to be a true origin story, but it is going to be a rookie story, if you will. So Barry Allen has been operating as a vigilante for about a month or so. Still unfamiliar with his powers, he is far from a perfect hero, but has good heart and motives. We see Barry with a suit that is functional, however, it's not going to be his final product, whether it's going to be in this movie or in a later movie in this universe. And as he's getting used to being a new hero, there is an Aussie who is coming in and causing a lot of problems with his boomerangs. This, of course, is Captain Boomerang. And so we get a lot of fun scenes. This is supposed to just be a lighthearted intro kind of to superhero 101, if you will, for the Flash. And before we go any further, I will also mention that I am not using Ezra Miller at all. So instead of Ezra Miller, I am casting Lucas Till as Barry Allen. At the end of the movie, Boomerang is going to be put into Iron Heights. Flash learns how to be a hero, not a villain. And him and Iris West get set up for their first date. Flash now leaves this movie learning how to be a much better hero. Stakes are going to be a little smaller in this movie, which I think is perfectly fine. You don't need big stakes in every single movie. Post-credit scenes, you guessed it. Amanda Waller and Rick Flag show up to recruit Captain Boomerang for the Suicide Squad. Now, I know I just said in The Flash we just had lower stakes. Well, those are coming back. In 2016, I'm going to call this a year of exploration or a year of expansion, if you will. Very little of this is going to take place on Earth, on land. To start off, we're going to do Green Lantern Corps. And this isn't going to actually feature any humans at all. It's all going to be taking place pretty much in space on Oa. And it's going to introduce the Green Lantern Corps as its own entity, using Sinestro and Abin Sur as its main characters. And these two will, of course, expand our universe, show off the Green Lanterns of Earth later on, but also set up the future Yellow Lanterns. Parallax is going to be the main villain here, and it is going to be clear that this is the biggest, most powerful being that we've yet to see in the DCEU. And long story short, the movie is really going to end with Abin Sur, of course, dying, Sinestro succumbing to the power of fear, and it's really going to leech onto his brain like a parasite. So he's still going to be a Green Lantern at the end of this movie. There's going to be the funeral for Abin Sur. His ring in the post-credit scenes will actually fly off, landing through a house on Coast City, and find Hal Jordan. And we'll know that by the camera panning down after a light explodes in the middle of the night from that room, and you see a figure fly off, Hal Jordan going off to Oa for his training. And on the mailbox, it'll read H. Jordan. So Sinestro will still be on Oa as a Green Lantern for a little while, still being able to help train Hal. It's just going to be that he has this problem in his head, and it's going to be that of fear. And we'll come back to Sinestro later on. To close out 2016, I have Aquaman, and this one's really, really simple. Strip out all the Justice League references, replace Amber Turd with Emilia Clarke, because Game of Thrones reunion be a Game of Thrones reunion, and there you go. We're going to keep that the same. I really like the first Aquaman movie. Ocean Master's the main villain. Black Manta shows up for a larger, minor role, if that makes sense, just like how he does in the real movie. Just take out those Steppenwolf references, replace Amber Heard, and there you go. That's my new Aquaman movie. Starting off 2017, this is going to be the first real team-up movie, and this is going to be a soft sequel for Superman, Batman, and Wonder Woman, who are all 2, 3, and 4 years, respectively, removed from their first movie. So, perfect time for sequels. Just like how in Batman vs. Superman, this is going to be a very similar story where Lex Luthor is going to try to pit Superman and Batman against each other. Batman will have a less of emphasis put on him, as well as Alfred. Jason Todd will still be there. And of course, Barbara Gordon, who's a new addition from the original Batman vs. Superman, she's going to be suspecting of the duo's real identities. And there'll be more emphasis placed upon Superman and especially Wonder Woman. As a fun fact, Spider-Man and Captain America Civil War has more speaking lines than Superman did in Batman vs. Superman. I'm going to let that sink in for a second. So they're still going to be facing off against Lex Luthor, as Lex is going to try to pit Superman and Batman against each other. There's still going to be a version of the Martha scene. Hear me out. Hear me out. There's going to be a version of the Martha scene. And here's how I'm going to fix it. Instead of it being like, oh my gosh, Martha, they're both their parents, they're both their mom's name is Martha. Like, what a coincidence. And instead of doing it like that, and having the writers really think they're clever with that, instead we're going to have Superman say, save my mother. So the whole fight kind of leads in the same way, but instead of save Martha, it's going to be save my mom or my mother. You know, it's going to be save her. And it's going to be Batman, Bruce Wayne, looking down at Superman, Kal-El, somebody who he sees as a threat, not human. Now, essentially surrender to him. And all he's going to do is just beg that his mother is saved. Superman's going to say things like, Luthor, stop Luthor, save my mother, you know, and Batman, that's going to snap him back to reality. Oh, there goes gravity. And that is going to really, I think, really fix that scene. And then, of course, Lois Lane comes in very similarly. If you really want to have that connection that both their mom's name is Martha, have it be after the warehouse scene where KG Beast blows up from the flamethrower. Instead of having Martha Kent be very calm or seemingly weirdly calm in that scenario, have her actually be freaking out a little bit. And as Batman has her like wrapped up in his cape and he's trying to calm her down, have him just go, "What is your name?" And she's like, "What?" He's like, "What is your name?" And he's just saying it in a very calm way. And here you can have her say, "Martha. My name is Martha Kent." And that's where you can, if you really want to, you can have the scene cut to, Martha Wayne. And then you can be like, he just, he gets some amount of closure. Because I think that, just like how a lot of writers for Spider-Man never give him a break, and he's, Spider-Man has to always be in misery. I think a lot of writers for Batman do the same thing, where he has to be all dark all the time, all about responsibility, all about going out on patrol and not being a human. That a lot of that aspect is forgotten about in Batman movies. So having this moment here for him is going to be a lot for character growth. And I think will actually make him look a lot more human, and it'll be a really touching moment. So that's how I would save the Martha scene. And yeah, we'll then finish the movie off with Superman and Wonder Woman in front of the media talking about, their defeat over Lex Luthor in how Superman's mother was saved, or, this citizen, really, they're not going to really say it's Superman's mother. And the media will then dub this team as the Trinity, as Superman and Wonder Woman tell them that they're going to be teaming up for any threat that's too big for any one of them, and they'll have the Batman on call as needed. Of course, referring to Batman always saying that he's going to be a part-timer for this Justice League thing, which has yet to form. This is just the Trinity, which would then, of course, later become the Justice League. For the post-credit scenes, there's going to be two of them. The first of which is going to be Sinestro constructing his first yellow power ring and having a big group of devotees or followers behind him do the exact same, and they switch out their Green Lantern rings for yellow ones. And this, of course, spawns the Yellow Lantern Corps. And the second post-credit scene is going to be kind of following Barbara Gordon. I didn't say it during the plot, but Barbara Gordon does figure out that Bruce Wayne is Batman and Jason Todd is Robin. And so she officially becomes Batgirl. In a similar post-credit scene to Ant-Man 1, where Wasp gets to see her suit, we will see the first Batgirl suit. Speaking of the Justice League, here it is. And taking a lot of inspiration from Infinity War, this is going to really have the team kind of find themselves. I don't have a Nick Fury-like character that can assemble the team, so we're going to have the characters just find each other through the general plot and the history of the universe up to this point. So Hal Jordan, played by Chris Pine, is fighting Sinestro in space and is clearly losing. As a last resort, Jordan's ring flies him off to Earth, where he crash lands in Central City and is discovered by Barry Allen, unconsciously yammering about entities of fear. Barry takes him into his hideout, where he takes Jordan's ring as a precaution and interrogates him. After hearing about the Lantern Corps war that's about to go on, Barry then suggests calling the Trinity for help, because he's extremely inexperienced. He has no idea who the hell this Green Lantern is or anything that's going on, and the Trinity are three established heroes who are a lot more powerful than him that can actually, he feels like, do some help. They can maybe contact, the team, and a fun way that they could do this and get their attention is like fake a crime or whatever to get Superman's attention in Metropolis or Batman's attention in Gotham City, and meets in the Batcave. That'll just be a fun way to do it, is just like have them fake a crime or do something along those lines to get the attention of Superman, Batman, or Wonder Woman. And long story short, they eventually do meet. Every member of the team thus far, except Aquaman, I'll tell you how we get to Aquaman, are in the Batcave. And Hal Jordan is going over this Sinestro Corps as well as the Green Lanterns, similar to Wong and Doctor Strange talking about the Infinity Stones. So similar type of explanations going on here. And suddenly there is an event happening in Hawaii. And this is the volcanoes erupting. And then there's reports of all these like yellow constructs and yellow holograms that are appearing all over, and that's where Hal Jordan's like, that's him, that's Sinestro, that's what they're doing. And so they eventually all go off to Hawaii, and there is a lone hero trying to defend them, and that is Aquaman, a lone hero already there. So he's clearly outnumbered. You get a lot of cool fight sequences between the soon-to-be Justice League and these lanterns. And there's going to probably be one more fight later on as the big climax. And this is going to be ending with Sinestro being banished to the Phantom Zone by Superman and the League, starting off with the construction of the Watchtower. The post-credit scenes, we're teasing the next villain for the Justice League. That is Vandal Savage, not the Crime Syndicate like how it did before. Nope, we're not doing Crime Syndicate. We're doing Vandal Savage. To start off phase 2, I have the first mini-series or limited series, and this is going to be Batgirl and Robin. So this show will mostly focus on Batgirl, Barbara Gordon, and Robin, Jason Todd, and Batman will appear throughout, but he's not going to be the focus of this show. We'll get a massive mob war between the Penguin, who is going to be employing Killer Croc, and Carmine Falcone, who's going to be employing Victor Zsasz. Over the course of the show, we'll delve a little deeper into the new members of this Bat family by watching them take on this mob war that is going on between these various villains. In the background, while on patrol, we'll see experimental steroid testing. This will be extremely early stages of Venom. So it's not going to be a major plot point, but it is going to be there to help establish the world, build it up a little bit, and connect to Bane eventually. Ra's al Ghul and Talia al Ghul are visiting Batman after a patrol session from Batgirl and Robin. There is mention of some information about a young heir potentially. Batman doesn't hear this. This is strictly just between Ra's and Talia. And so it is, of course, a also very, very deep foreshadow to eventual Damian Wayne. The show ends with a showdown between the Bat family and the villains. Again, Penguin, Carmine Falcone, Killer Croc, and Victor Zsasz. And Batgirl and Robin really show that they're going to add a lot to this team. They show a lot of growth. And the word I really liked is really graduates into being experienced heroes of their own. The next project is going to be interesting. It is Wonder Woman 84, but it is a retooling from what was really released. I rewatched this movie and made notes as the movie was going on what things I wanted to keep and what I wanted to change. So one quick thing is that the tone of this movie is that Diana needs to really move on from her friends from the first movie. Etta Candy, the Commando Soldiers, and of course, Steve Trevor. Diana is moving from city to city as an anonymous hero and is currently working in DC after the death of Etta Candy, who lived to be about 95 to 100 or so. I'm guessing how old she is during the events of World War I. And Superman, again, still has to be the first publicly global superhero, so this is why she's working as an anonymous hero from around the globe. Barbara Minerva is hunting Wonder Woman as she sees her as the greatest hunt. She is already Cheetah in a way, though she needs a ritual and time to transform herself into Cheetah. And it's also only a temporary transformation. So she's not going to be this bumbling, loser nerd stereotypical loser nerd who gains all this confidence through a wish and then eventually becomes the powerful Cheetah by the end of the movie. It's going to be a different Barbara Minerva. She still works with Diana similarly to the beginning of the movie, and it's still relatively genuine. She doesn't know Diana is Wonder Woman, and they have a good working relationship. They aren't as much friends as much as they are co-workers. And they still come across the Dreamstone, just like in the original movie. Diana still unconsciously wishes for Steve Trevor to come back, and Barbara doesn't make a wish yet at this point. Lord is still mostly unchanged. Pedro Pascal plays Maxwell Lord really, really entertainingly in that movie, so I would keep him pretty much unchanged. And Diana must also keep a weather eye out for Cheetah, as she could be watching at any time. Most of the movie proceeds similarly as Lord gains power. Steve comes back, though there's no body hijacking nonsense like how he took over that one random dude's body. He just comes back. After the White House scene, Lord and Cheetah still meet here, and Barbara transforms back into human form on their way to the broadcast center. Instead of Lord granting Barbara extra abilities from other people's wishes, she simply makes her wish here to become the apex predator, which turns her into Cheetah permanently. Diana must renounce her wish to of course still get her abilities back, saying farewell to Steve Trevor. Again, the main thing of the movie being that she needs to stop looking behind her and move forward. And the rest of the movie still plays out very similarly to the original movie. Barbara never renounces her wish, staying as Cheetah. And for all that is relevant to this universe, this is the only unrenounced wish. The next movie is actually going to be Suicide Squad. And I don't have a lot of info on this, just more of a concept really, and that is Amanda Waller officially assembles the Suicide Squad, the team members consisting of Harley Quinn, Deadshot, Captain Boomerang, Rick Flag, June Moon, Katana, and Killer Croc. And the reason that it's this team as opposed to like Peacemaker, Bloodshots, and those types of characters is that this was originally written before the James Gunn Suicide Squad even came out. So my Suicide Squad movies tend to resemble a touch more visually of the 2016 version. So that's the reason for this version of the team. They are put up against a villain known as Queen Bee and her hive, a well-oiled, functioning group of a literal hive mind of slaves under the Queen Bee's control. And this battle will be a group between a group that functions perfectly in sync and a sloppily assembled group of villains. So it would be that really, really cool juxtaposition. And here we'll get a meeting between, of course, government officials and Waller talking about why she assembled the team, you know, all of that stuff. And the second post-credit scene will be June Moon discovering that she is going to be Enchantress. So it's her actually discovering that cave and becoming Enchantress. So she is June Moon through this movie. She isn't Enchantress. That happens at the post-credit scene. Now, starting off in 2019, we have my second Batman movie, a movie I am retitling as just simply Batman Vengeance. This story will combine aspects of The Killing Joke and Death in the Family. Robin, Batgirl have been a great trio with Batman, and they're putting away bad guys left and right, and they are a well-oiled machine. For the past roughly 18 months since Barbara joined at the end of Justice League, Joker's still running free since Harley freed him and is out for revenge against Batman. While Joker is planning his revenge, Jason starts to become very violent, which causes Bruce to temporarily shut him down as Robin until he calms down. This leads him to start going back through his past. He goes back to the streets that he was growing up before joining Bruce Wayne and Alfred, and discovers information about his birth mother and that she actually never died from terminal illness. That was somebody else posing as his mother. He tracks down his real mother while working in the slums of Gotham and she finds out that she is a sort of charitable missionary, all while being followed by Harley Quinn. Joker enacts his plan against Batman, targeting Commissioner Gordon by shooting his daughter through the spine, just like how he does in The Killing Joke. He paralyzes her from the waist down, takes them both to Amusement Mile, a rundown amusement park in Gotham, to mentally torture Jim Gordon. Batman is quick to action on his way to help the Gordons while having trouble getting a hold of Jason. So, Alfred then contacts an old friend who agreed to help them and meet Batman at Amusement Mile. Batman then finds Joker and starts completely wailing on his goons, and that is until a familiar voice from behind him calms him down, and this is Nightwing. Dick Grayson makes his first official appearance in the DCEU. And Batman then learns of Joker's plan. He's informed by Joker himself, who he has been beating rigorously, and that he was prepared that in case Gordon didn't go insane from his one bad day, that he targeted Batman directly, showing him a feed from a nearby warehouse in Gotham where Jason is lying in a pool of his own blood with a mysterious woman, of course, being Jason's mother. And then Batman then almost loses control and threatens to beat the warehouse's location out of Joker, which Joker just says, yeah, you can have it. You're not going to make it there in time. Nightwing then stays back to deal with Joker, allowing Batman to go off and stop the explosion and try to save Jason. And of course, the movie ends with the warehouse exploding seconds before Batman can even reach the property. Jason's body is found lifeless in the rubble. In the post-credit scenes, the very first one, we witness a grave robbing. A mysterious group of people have stolen this coffin, and the headstone would read Jason Todd. And the second one is that a young kid no older than 13 is watching old Batman and Robin, this is Dick Grayson, highlights captured from security cams on the internet. He recognizes Robin as he does a quadruple somersault, a move that he's only ever seen done once before that way, and completely freaks out. He, not only by the admittedly amazing acrobatics, but because he's only seen that move once before, he pulls up old Haley's Circus highlights of the Flying Graysons and connects the dots that Robin must have been Dick Grayson, which means that Batman is Bruce Wayne. This, of course, is a young Tim Drake. The second movie that closes out 2019 is going to be Superman Terror of Steel. And this movie is going to start with Metropolis being put under a power of fear when there has been a series of murders and robberies from a new criminal mastermind. The criminal specializes in robotic drones and is self-dubbed Metallo. Supes is having trouble finding him as Metallo never physically shows up to any one of the crimes, and he isn't doing much better as Clark Kent, Daily Planet's investigative journalist, and he's gone as far as finding a name, John Corbin. Corbin, getting arrogant, decides to take care of his next crime himself. However, he is wearing a robotic suit/drone hybrid. Think almost like Springtrap from FNAF 3 and Iron Man almost mixed together. While the first part of his plan works out just fine, Supes is able to get enough damage on the suits where his getaway happens and his suit malfunctions, trapping Corbin inside before the suit can properly open. Superman then takes him to the best doctors available, where he is then presumed dead, as his brain is the only part of him that is even somewhat intact. In the post-credit scenes, we see that two hidden men are taking Corbin's body, and they're experimenting on it, attempting to bring him back to life. They finally succeed, and when they power the suit with a chunk of kryptonite combined with Corbin's brain, this creates Metallo. To open up the new decade in 2020, I have my Green Lantern sequel, Green Lantern Rage. Hal Jordan is now a well-respected Green Lantern of Oa after his performance against Sinestro and his Yellow Lanterns during the events of Justice League. This goes to his head, however, as he is challenged by a new up-and-coming Green Lantern, Guy Gardner. Hal becomes arrogant, which leads him to bite off more than he can chew when Oa is threatened by a being known as Atrocitus and his Red Lanterns of Rage. Hal shoots off to fight Atrocitus and is horribly outmatched, and he evades capture and is able to find his way back to Oa, where the Guardians of the Universe then suspend Hal of service. He is then sent to Earth for a while, and while on Earth, he meets a woman that he can connect with, and she understands him, everything that he is going through, even if she doesn't know what specifically is going on, as Hal is kind of wishy-washy on, oh, I'm a intergalactic space cop that glows green, and his weakness is the color yellow. This woman's name is Carol Ferris, and after a week's time back on Earth, Hal gets a message from Kilowog that Oa has been completely wrecked by Atrocitus, and the Green Lantern's numbers are vastly diminished by death and corruption, including Guy Gardner. Feeling rejuvenated from Miss Ferris and his week off, Hal and Kilowog then assemble what Green Lanterns that they can find and take on Atrocitus and his Red Lanterns as a group. Hal and Kilowog similarly then take on Atrocitus. He is defeated, and the corrupted lanterns are purified of their rage. Guy is suspended for similar reasons to Hal, and because of his damage as a Red Lantern on Oa. And he is then sent to Earth, where he will wait with a powered-down battery and ring, which is just this point is just fancy jewelry, and Hugh will have to wait to be reinstated / called to action. Finally, Oa begins reconstruction. In the post-credit scenes, we visit Miss Ferris after Hal takes off with Kilowog for their battle against Atrocitus, and notice that she starts glowing a little bit. Not because she's genuinely pretty, but because she's actually physically glowing pink. She is then seen blasting off into space in a different direction than Hal and Kilowog. Of course, her being Star Sapphire. And then now we have Flash 2. Barry Allen is a full-fledged superhero now and is putting away criminals. As Barry Allen, a forensic scientist, and as the Flash, speedster. His new girlfriend Iris is having her younger cousin Wally come over to meet Barry, as Wally is interested in going into law enforcement. And while Barry is showing Wally around the workstation, there is an attack by a mirrored criminal. To protect Wally, Barry must tap into the Speed Force, which he doesn't still fully understand, and tries to ward off this Mirror Master. However, doing this, he accidentally recreates his own origin by sending Wally over a cabinet of chemicals with the lightning that he summons from the Speed Force. Wally is then incapacitated, and this starts to make Iris question Flash's hero status, as she still doesn't know that Barry is the Flash. Yet. Barry, feeling tremendous guilt, is determined to track down Mirror Master, who is eventually, of course, defeated by the end of the movie and is locked up into Iron Heights. Now, around the time of the climax, Wally does regain consciousness, and Barry sees that he has also then become a speedster. Reveals his identity as the Flash to Wally, and then offers to train him to help him through the changes. We then see that Wally is hesitant since he knows that Barry is now the cause of his new abilities, and he also knows that he, Barry, is the only one who could possibly help him. And so Wally agrees. Camera then pans to the door where Barry shows Wally the speedster abilities, and Iris sees everything. She drops everything she's holding, discovering that not only is her boyfriend the Flash, but her cousin is now also a speedster. In the post-credit scenes, Mirror Master is recruited by a blacked-out individual to get revenge against not only the Flash, but the entire league. This is Jason Todd as Red Hood, by the way. We just don't know that yet. To close out 2020, I have Aquaman 2. Arthur Curry, now King of Atlantis, is proving himself to be a worthy Atlantean as well as surface superhero with the Justice League. However, there is still somebody who is hell-bent on taking down this King of the Seven Seas, David King, Black Manta. A man of extreme persistence and patience who systematically attacks Atlantis, targeting Aquaman, and more specifically, eventually, his alter ego as Arthur Curry. At the end of the movie, and after many attacks on Atlantis failing, Manta then targets Tomez Curry, Arthur's father. Arthur tracks down Manta to find that his father is now sprawled out on the ground, dead. Manta emerges and the climactic fight ensues. Only it ends when Aquaman has Manta pinned and he has his trident pointed right at his neck. And his mother, Atlanna, intervenes, just like how she does in the first movie, is able to see and ease Arthur's pain, giving him the strength to spare Manta's life and have a trial in Atlantean court. And then to start 2021, we get Shazam, and this is going to be mostly how we got it. And with that, with the post-credit scenes, we still get our normal first intro with Mr. Mind, but I think it'd be really fun to show that there's a second post-credit scene that really connects the 7 deadly sins with Trigon, and of course, eventually Raven. So I think it'd be really cool to have, I don't know what would be specifically, but to show that the 7 deadly sins are also children of Trigon alongside Raven. And now we're actually going to start with the first entirely rewritten original movie, Justice League 2, Justice League Eternal. In the original cut of this universe, this was actually a crime syndicate story. I wanted to eradicate any sign of multiverse. I didn't want the multiverse in here at all, so this is an entirely rewritten Justice League 2. Starting off, we have a montage of each of our main heroes fighting various criminals or villains from their respective rogues galleries. So it could be some examples like Batman's fighting Firefly, Superman's fighting Bloodsport, not Idris Elba. Aquaman is fighting the Trench, finishing with like Flash fighting Gorilla Grodd, who's actually going to play a role in this movie larger than this little cameo. Grodd is then imprisoned by Flash, where he is eventually set free by members of the League of Assassins and a hulking zombie. where many guards were also hit by red lightning. Barry, who is taken aback by all of this as a forensic scientist within the Central City Police Department, decides to seek Batman's advice since he is the resident ninja of the Justice League. While in the Batcave, Bruce helps Barry at least identify the League of Assassins, though he's unable to give any info on this zombie. As it came to the lightning, Bruce only comments that he's only ever seen this type of lightning once before, or in one scenario before. Barry asks who, and Bruce explains candidly, well, by you. Here's where you meet the villains. Gorilla Grodd, Solomon Grundy, who is the zombie, Lex Luthor, Ra's al Ghul, Cheetah, and Professor Zoom, who, this is Eobard Thawne, though we never acknowledge this as Eobard Thawne, only ever as Zoom. And finally, the leader of this team, Vandal Savage. We hear them scheming and berating each other as they review their plans, and we learn about parts of their plan which do involve immortality, perhaps by a joke by how Grundy attained it, but he shouldn't have it. So that'd be a fun little scene. Cutting back to the Batcave, Bruce and Barry see an alert from Metropolis's Museum of Natural History being broken into by two mysterious individuals. Flash and Batman, expecting to run back and see the same jailbreakers, leave for Metropolis and rendezvous with Superman at the museum. The two intruders are winged, clad in gold with feathered helmets, masks, wielding maces. And our trio of heroes catch the intruders by surprise, which leads to a fun fight between the characters. After calming down, the two intruders introduce themselves as Carter Hall and Shira Saunders, the Hawkman and Hawkgirl. They mention that their search was in vain, and what they were looking for is not actually there. The League then calls the rest of the League, Wonder Woman, Hal Jordan, Aquaman, and Shazam. If I didn't mention it, Shazam joins the team after being recruited by Wonder Woman in a post-credit scene earlier on. And the 9 heroes meet in the Watchtower. Carter and Sheila catch the Justice League up on their history and that they have been reincarnated over many lifetimes spanning millennia due to a curse between them and their adversary, a caveman by the name of Vandal Savage, who has been granted great strength, agility, intelligence, and not to mention immortality. For many of their lifetimes, they had believed that they were doomed to be killed by Savage, only to be reborn without any prior memories of any of their past lives, destined to find each other and fall in love, and once they do so, recall all of their memories and continue their fight against Vandal Savage. They believe they actually found a way to imprison him indefinitely, allowing them to live their life in peace for the first time in history. To do so, they would need a part of the meteorite that had landed near Savage thousands of years ago, which gave him his abilities. The team then begins constructing what they can of a prison. Meeting with our villains, again, we see them to also be looking for the meteorite. Zoom, Lex, Cheetah, and Grodd are seeking their own form of immortality. Ra's is looking for a more convenient form outside of the Lazarus pit. Grundy is along for the ride, but Savage has a deeper scheme in mind. Savage feigns an interest in finding the crater, and while keeping an eye on who he deems as threats to his plan that he can manipulate. We'd eventually find out that Savage's plan is to use the abilities of Grodd, Cheetah, Thawne, and Grundy to attack the JLA and keep them at bay while using the resources of Ra's and Lex to fund his endgame. Also Grodd a little bit with the guerrilla army, but it's mostly Ra's and Lex's money. Attracting another meteorite to Earth, not only to give immortality, or not just to give immortality, but to send the world back to the Stone Ages and restart civilization, killing all metahumans or anyone that could stop him, and then he would then enslave the remaining humans and truly become ruler of the world. Skipping to the climax and the finale, the original meteor is found. Though it has lost its ability to give immortality over the years, it is still capable of imprisoning Savage. The villains are all understandably upset about this, and though the heroes are on their way, a final battle then ensues between everybody. Ra's uses the League of Assassins to cover up his escape right away, but Lex, Cheetah, Grodd, and Zoom are all fueled by their shared hatred for their respective hero and stay to attempt to kill or at least torment them. Grundy is just having fun. Savage gets terrifyingly close to calling the meteor to enact his plan, and Hawkman and Hawkgirl both decide to give their lives and destroy the meteor before it can end humanity. It must be them because the rest of the heroes are too preoccupied with the villains on the ground, those being primarily Superman, Wonder Woman, Green Lantern, and Shazam, the resident flyers of the Justice League. This allows the team enough time to take advantage over the villains. Grundy's heart is ripped out. He will revive. Thawne wishes Flash a rain check on their bile and escapes. Cheetah and Lex are reading the situation and both leave at opportune times, leaving Grodd to be incapacitated and later imprisoned again and for good. Savage is then brought up to his prison. He is temporarily held by Green Lantern while Batman and the rest of the League complete Savage's prison, which eventually is kept in the Watchtower. In the post-credit scenes, the League is then interviewed by a news reporter after Savage is locked up in the Watchtower and questions if this is even the right decision. After the camera then cuts, the reporter gives his own opinion, which then it is agreeing with the JLA on holding Savage themselves. While leaving the interview, we briefly see that this reporter changes shape into a green-skinned alien, the Martian Manhunter. And to close out Phase 2 in 2021, I then have Martian Manhunter's origin story. J'onn J'onzz grows up on Mars with his brother Ma'alefa'ak. Jones gets married to another Martian named Mira, and they have a daughter, Kim. He also becomes a form of police officer on Mars and is living a great life. Now as adults, many years before the Man of Steel and the space race, Brainiac sees their home city and desires it for his collection. Mars is giving a warning from Brainiac about his impending attack and reminds them about his 100% success rate and that it is futile to resist his attack. Ma'alefa'ak comes up with an idea of self-sabotage, destroying the city and planet, so it is no longer even desirable. When that happens, they abandon ship and look for a new world to inhabit. J'onn and the rest of the Martian society reject this idea and lock up Ma'alefa'ak for treason/conspiring to commit domestic terrorism. He finds a way to escape prison and enacts his plan on his own, setting buildings ablaze, rigging explosives, and overall ruining the city. In this insanity, Mira and Kim are trapped in their home and are both burned alive. Ma'alefa'ak tries to convince J'onn that is to escape with him as there's nothing left for him or anyone here on Mars. J'onn realizes that Mira and Kim are both dead. The two of them begin to fight and try to kill each other. This is broken up by Brainiac's arrival, which both brothers dodge out of the way and escape off-world. Brainiac sees the city is destroyed and is disappointed to find it in ruins and leaves everything behind, ruining his perfect record, and now actually stops giving warnings like that. J'onn then flies off towards Earth and lands, and this is, I would say, roughly in the late 40s. We watch as J'onn in a time-lapse in the post-credit scenes, in a sort of montage, going through the years, traveling, creating new identities, and eventually becoming the reporter that we see at the end of Justice League 2, and eventually he does join the Justice League. And if I didn't say so, to kind of give an extra explanation for the psychosomatic fear of fire of the Martians, I wanted to have it be connected to that of Mira and Kim. So whenever he sees fire, it brings him back to that moment of pain. All right, so kickstarting Phase 3 in 2022, I have Nightwing. And this will be our formal introduction into the character of Tim Drake as well. So Dick Grayson, who might have graduated from being Robin, still has a lot to learn becoming his own hero. And after getting a surprise in the form of a teenager named Tim Drake, who claims to know his identity of Nightwing and that Bruce Wayne is Batman and that Dick Grayson was also the first Robin, all this information that a teenager definitely shouldn't know, we also learn a lot about Dick Grayson's past as Haley Circus comes into Bloodhaven. It is here that we meet an old friend of Dick Grayson who has the hilariously confusing name of Richard. So when I refer to Dick Grayson, I'm going to call him Dick. When I'm talking about his friend, the Raptor, I will also call him Richard. So yes, they share a name. So Dick is Nightwing, Richard is the Raptor. Got it? Good. The Raptor, who was orphaned as a child and raised shortly with Dick as brothers of sorts before Bruce Wayne adopts Dick Grayson. They start reconnecting, and this is when Richard drops a bomb on Dick Grayson. And that is that he knows who sabotaged the trapeze that killed John and Mary Grayson, Dick's parents. And while the two are talking, Tim quietly starts suspecting Richard and that he knows more than he lets on. And this all happens around the time that Richard gives Dick a name, Tony Zuko, a mob boss. Before the two of them go to track down Zuko as Nightwing and the Raptor, Tim tries to warn Dick about Richard, claiming that he isn't who he says he is. Dick dismisses Tim, but keeps what he says in the back of his mind, And Tim is left behind while Dick goes on with Richard because, well, you don't bring a teenager who has no combat training on a mission like this. So this is the last we'll really see of Tim in the movie. The two of them get into small fights with Zuko's goons, including one who gives Nightwing some problems. And this is until Nightwing gets the help of Raptor and absolutely completely wrecks this goon and knocks him out cold. This happens to be Roland Desmond, who will later become Blockbuster. After they find Zuko, a man who's about to be nothing because he's about to lose a gang war, Raptor tries to get Dick to kill him. And that doesn't go well with Dick Grayson whatsoever, because Richard is all about, like, look what they did to it. Look what he did to your parents. He deserves this. And, well, Dick Grayson is, trained by Bruce Wayne. He's trained by Batman. He's got to go through the system, not to say innocent until proven guilty, but, there's systems in place. We're not judge, jury, executioner. And this is cut off by Raptor getting completely fed up with Dick and absolutely clawing Zuko to death. And it is at this point that Dick finally sees what Tim was talking about. And this is because Raptor is actually part of this other gang trying to get Zuko brought down, and Raptor wanted Dick to kill him and really kind of have this poeticism to it. This is then when Dick and Richard get into an absolute brawl, and where Dick, of course, comes out on top because, superhero movie, hero wins in the end. And this sends the Raptor to prison. We then get a couple of post-credit scenes. The first of which is we see Tim Drake making his way out of Bloodhaven into Gotham and up into Wayne Manor, where he will eventually meet Bruce Wayne. And then the second post-credit scene, we'll see a chemist working on a formula to help save somebody in the room. This scientist is Mark Desmond, who is trying to save his brother Roland, who just got beat up. And this will create Blockbuster. Next up is Wonder Woman, Love and Betrayal. This movie starts out with a story about Circe, Hecate, and the ancient battle against Hippolyta. Circe anticipates her defeat and transforms herself into an alternate form at the price of her memories, and she will only regain these memories once one of Amazonian blood strikes her. We then continue into present day with Diana on trial, representing the Justice League of America, or just the Justice League, with angry civilians that are still upset with the events that have occurred in past movies. Things like Justice League 2, Superman 2, Batman 2, kind of take your pick on whatever movie. But she's on trial representing the Justice League, not necessarily for her specifically, about events that have happened recently. The lawyer helping her out is named Donna Milton, and these two become, well, really close friends. And the case is finally won in favor of the League. And this is when an angry mom comes to attack the two women, and Diana pushes Donna back to protect her. Well, for those of you who really see writing on the wall, Donna is Circe, and by doing this, because technically one of Amazonian blood is striking Circe, this causes a flooding of memories back into her mind, where she starts really confusing herself as Circe or Donna Milton. She has a really weird identity crisis, and she ends up going into the hospital and she loses part of her sanity. With this, it ends up having a huge effect on her, of course, Donna / Circe, and the Circe part of her takes over 100%, leaving Donna behind. Now, vowing to finish the work of the past, she discovers that part of the process involves the power of the moon goddess, who shares the name with not only Hecate, but Diana as well. Because of this, Circe must do battle with Diana, Princess, I wrote Prince in my script. Do battle with Diana, Princess of Themyscira, to ensure the power would become her own instead of accidentally going to Diana. Diana has problems with doing battle with her then friend, and who has turned drunk and evil with power. The solution, though, is part of the problem. However, that Diana doesn't have to kill Circe, just imprison her. So, looking for the solution in her past and her mother, she discovers that it is possible to imprison her on a distant world. And coming to terms with that her friend is gone, possibly forever, she finishes the final battle with Circe, banished to the world of Sorka. And this is a world that siphons all the magical abilities of its inhabitants, trapping her on a world where she could live peacefully and keeping Earth safe from evil. Next up, we got a fun one, Aquaman 3. And this movie is going to open with a young Mera alongside playing with her twin sister, Gila. I hope I pronounced that right. The two of them get along well as kids, though as they get older, Gila starts to cause problems. She would occasionally hurt Mera, lie and steal from her and others. Mera was always a bit more of the authoritarian one. Gila was definitely more of the troublemaker. And so Mera was always going to go off and tattle, try to turn her sister in to her parents or the police, and after a feeling of betrayal, Gila ran away. We continue on the story to meet a 15-year-old, or roughly 15-year-old, Jackson Hyde, who has recently started high school and is excited because he'll be rejoining his best friend, Kenny, who is about a year older than him. And this is actually his secret boyfriend. As although Jackson's mom knows of his sexuality, the rest of his school and community outside of his town of Albuquerque, New Mexico, don't know. The two leave town one day to go to the San Diego Zoo, and Jackson uses this opportunity to tell Kenny about his abilities. After building up the courage to show his abilities to Kenny, he then is shocked and runs away, this being Kenny. And when Jackson finally catches up to him, he notices that he is in this trance-like state just outside of a window, and still stressed over the earlier reaction. Jackson tries to see what's going on, and this is when Kenny slowly starts to walk over the pier and jumps off without thoughts, among many others doing the exact same thing. In the background of this scene, by the way, there would be deaf folks or other folks wearing headphones watching dumbfounded alongside Jackson. Making his way over to the pier, he notices out in the ocean that there was a woman who quickly turns back into the water and jets off. Jackson follows the mysterious woman into the ocean, but cannot find her. This is when he stumbles upon Aquaman battling King Shark. Quietly, Jackson follows Arthur back to Atlantis and sneaks into the city. It isn't until after Arthur puts Nanaue into prison that he is made aware of Jackson's presence. Jackson quickly explains what happened to him/Kenny, and that he was looking for the woman responsible. Mera and Volko enter and decide against Arthur's wishes to help Jackson, as he's clearly distressed and clearly part Atlantean as he's surviving underwater. And after re-explaining the incidents, they believe that the woman who attacked them is Siren, or at least a Siren, a being of Greek mythology who is thought to be extinct, and the team tried to contact Wonder Woman, who's, of course, of Greek mythology, through Oracle from Watchtower. So with this, of course, we get a fun little bit with Oracle relaying that Diana's busy and can't take any calls. So Arthur settles for, let's say, someone funny like Shazam, because Shazam also comes from mythology, so maybe he knows something. And we get a lot of funny banter between Shazam and Aquaman as Shazam is contacted for the first time as a consult, for advice. It would just be a really fun thing to see, like, Billy Batson just kind of get all flustered and trying to give advice. Anyway, I just think that would just be really, really funny. Billy walks the team of Arthur, Mera, Volko, and Jackson about sirens from Greek mythology, myth, and explains that they would need earplugs and to not hear her song. Arthur quickly decides to leave Jackson behind, and Volko asks him if he would like to be trained. Volko asked Jackson, that is. And while trained, he'll be given his water bearer, or his water swords, if you will. Mera, unhappy with Arthur's treatment of Jackson, tries to talk him into having Jackson as his protege. It is here that we then start to hear music, and everyone begins to wander up towards the surface of the ocean and towards this music. By the time the heroes make it to the surface, all entranced, they all watch as everyone begins choking on the oxygen, and some quickly return to the ocean while others drown in the air. As those who may not remember, Atlanteans are kind of reverse humans. They can survive underwater, but they can't survive in oxygen. That's revealed in the first Aquaman movie. Only those of royal Atlantean blood, can survive in both. So, yeah, kind of reverse sirening happening. They later discovered that this was to break Black Manta out of prison. And this is where we also learn a bit of Siren's motivations. She is forgive me if I mispronounce this, Zebellian extremist and is Black Manta's lover. She is not only looking to break Manta out of prison, but also attack Atlantis and the surface world to send a message that to both her sister, and Arthur. Jackson and Volko, who are still in the city in the training center, which is soundproof for safety reasons, the song didn't quite make it to them, they see them and reunite. Volko looks at Siren and recognizes her as Hela as they begin to attack Volko and Jackson. Jackson takes on Manta wearing a suit that allows underwater survival, although he's essentially suitless, and Volko battles Hela. By the end of the quick battle, Manta recognizes Jackson as his son by a birthmark on his hand. Not any markings or the tattoos that Jackson has. This would be a separate thing. And knocks him out while Hela kills Volko. Just as this is all happening, Arthur and Mira are an eye shot and watch Volko get stabbed. Jackson is knocked unconscious. The two duos cross paths in the water, and Mira instantly recognizes her sister, though their love and grief for their friendship outweighs their hatred for the enemy, and they go to check on Jackson and Volko. Volko, with his dying breath, asks Arthur to take up Jackson as his pupil and train him like he, Volko, trained him, Arthur. As Volko dies, Jackson wakes up, and the remaining heroes plan an attack on Hela and Manta, including getting earplugs. While in the climactic battle, we see Jackson having glimpses of potential with his swords as Arthur and Mira fight Siren and Manta. Arthur eventually disables Manta's suit. Manta, though his hatred of Arthur, tries to fire a blast at his head, which only breaks his suit further, cracking the helmet before Arthur could stop him. Manta then drowns as the surrounding water fills his suit, sinking him towards the ocean floor. Hela is shocked and screams as she watches her love sink towards the ocean floor, and that gives Mira and Jackson enough time to get the upper hand on her. In the last-ditch attempt to attack her perfect sister and heroic living husband, she tries to use her song on the three of them. This does not work. This does work on Arthur, as one of his earplugs would have gotten loose in his fight with Manta, and Arthur begins to attack Mira while under the control of Siren. This ends when Jackson stabs her in the heart, and as she dies, Mira wishes that their lives would have turned out differently, and that although she loved her as a sister, because of what she's done, Mira is glad that Arthur and Jackson, as well as the rest of Atlantis, is safe. At the end of the movie, Jackson returns to his mother's home in Albuquerque with Arthur and Mira and explains to his mom that he wants to help people and follow Aquaman's mentorship. She feels a mix of relief and pride in who he has become and that he has found himself. Jackson wonders if Black Manta was his father, and then why does he have the abilities of an Atlantean/Zebellian? His mother reveals that she, like Queen Atlanna, had fallen in love with a human, this being Black Manta. Though the Atlanteans didn't approve of their love, she ran away with him, and he ended up deserting her after he unknowingly got her pregnant. Out of fear and shame, she decided to never return to Atlantis and didn't want to have Jackson go through the same pain that she did. So they grieve over the loss of Jackson's boyfriend Kenny from the beginning of the movie, and she lets him go and train with the other Atlanteans. Arthur, Mira, and Jackson return to Atlantis and give Volko a proper Atlantean burial. To start off, 2023, we have Batman Doom. And for this movie, we're going to open up with Bruce mourning the deaths of the people in his life. His father, mother, Jason, by bringing out flowers to their graves. And this is go all over a tragic, angry montage of Batman being more brutal than ever on criminals. And this is still not a plot point of this movie, but in these montages we will get glimpses of more advanced versions of Venom on the streets, so keen-eyed, eagle-eyed viewers will get the hints that Bane is coming. We also see him in the Batcave, Watchtower, and Hall of Justice, with the League looking worried/suspicious about his actions lately. This is where a knock comes on Wayne Manor. Alfred opens the door and finds a boy claiming to know that Bruce Wayne is Batman, and that he, Tim Drake, wants to be the next Robin. After a long talk with Bruce and Wayne Manor, alongside Dick Grayson, who had made it up, it is concluded that Tim would be the next Robin. However, he would endure the toughest training from Bruce to keep him from suffering Jason's fate. This is where we'll hear of a new vigilante in Gotham, a man taking control of all gangs wearing a leather outfit and a red motorcycle helmet dubbed the Red Hood. Bruce and Dick head out to start investigating, while Tim is left with Alfred learning in the cave, and Bruce and Dick start making some headway in the case. However, back in the Batcave, there is an ambush. Tim and Alfred are left unconscious as Mirror Master and Ma'alafa'ak make their way into the Batcave and start downloading plans from the Batcomputer. It is here that Batman and Nightwing are racing back to the Batcave as Alfred hits the silent alarm on his wrist before he fell. Bruce and Dick then come back and find out that Tim and Alfred and everything in the Batcave is perfectly fine. Everything's left the way it was, and Tim and Alfred are perfectly healthy. But what Mirror Master and Ma'alafa'ak did is that they stole contingency plans set up by Bruce in case any member of the Justice League were to go rogue. Using these plans to stun the League, a team composed of Red Hood, Cheetah, Metallo, Mirror Master, Ma'alafa'ak, and Dr. Sivana all attack. After all the League is put into danger from Red Hood's plan, Batman gets a call from the Flash. Flash then tells him that he had been impaled with a bomb that will explode if he slows down. At the same time, a newscast says Superman is unconscious from being shot. Bruce is then asked by Alfred, what in the world is happening to the Justice League? They're under attack. Dick then asks, by who? By me. I know, I stole that from Justice League Doom. It's too good not to use again here. Skipping to after Batman saves the League, Bruce gets a call from an unknown source. The Red Hood is on the other line. He calls Batman to tell him to meet him at a warehouse alone. The League tells him not to worry about going alone because they don't really trust Bruce anymore after it was revealed that it was all his plans of what just happened to them. It is at this warehouse that we see the identity of the Red Hood, Jason Todd, and his master plan. He wants to become a big enough threat to Batman by attacking the people Bruce cared for. He never intended to kill them, just make them lose their trust in Bruce. He says he did all of it just to get Batman in that warehouse with him and someone else. The Joker is then revealed to be in a closet, and Jason explains that he forgives Batman for not making it in time to save him, and that he's not mad that he died. He's furious with Batman that he didn't break his rule just once to avenge him by killing the Joker. Jason then forces an ultimatum onto Batman. Kill the Joker, or he blows the warehouse with all of them in it. After a lot of dialogue between the three, Batman takes the gun, shoots a hole next to Joker's head, and knocks the detonator out the window. Batman and Jason then brawl, one full of remorse and guilt, and the other full of anger and frustration. Batman apprehends Jason and sends him to prison while Joker got away. The movie then ends with Batman being voted out of the Justice League for creating these contingencies and being given a shard of kryptonite by Superman after this meeting as a trusted failsafe against himself, showing a bit of hope that Bruce isn't truly alone right now. Continuing in 2023, we have Suicide Squad 2. When Martian Manhunter comes to Earth, he is followed by the savages known as the White Martians, creatures like Jean with powers and abilities. However, they blame Martian Manhunter for the destruction of the planet and vow to kill him. They do this by locating where telepathic energy is being used mostly on the planet and infiltrating the country's law enforcement and government. This is, of course, the United States. When one of the Martians is taken down accidentally, they discover that the body reverts back to its Martian appearance and is immediately dissected. Within the government, there is an attempt to neutralize anybody else who could be an alien. Because of the sensitivity of this task, this was given to Task Force X, the Suicide Squad, and the team this time consists of Deadshot, Harley Quinn, Killer Croc, Enchantress, El Diablo, Rick Flag, Captain Boomerang, and Katana. However, they're going to need some help from this one. Coming in to act as a consult is voluntarily Martian Manhunter. Jean meets the Suicide Squad and reveals to them that as a Martian and reveals to himself as a Martian, and offers aid in defeating the infiltrators as they are from his world, and he knows how to defeat them. Waller is very against the consultation and aid of Jean, as since he is also of their world, then how could he be trusted? As this creates a lot of confusion when Waller is afraid when Jean shows his face to her, and Waller is never afraid. The group eventually realize that Amanda Waller is actually dead, and that she is being impersonated by a White Martian, and not just any White Martian, the leader Protex. So he impersonates Waller to ensure the biggest threat could be held off as much as possible, and so more white Martians could make it to Earth and create the largest possible army to kill the Martian that destroyed Mars, Jean Jones. Again, they're believing that Jean did it, not Ma'alefa'ak. The squad and Jean then face off against Protex and the White Martian army and wipe out the army and Protex. However, he is still barely alive. The movie would end with Jean walking up to Protex and is able to convince him before his passing that it was not Jean who destroyed Mars, that it was his brother Ma'alefa'ak. And after realizing Waller is gone, the squad simply just disbands and goes their separate ways. And now the Suicide Squad is effectively no more. And now, Flash 3. This one is probably the one that's gone through the most rewrites, I'm not gonna lie, but I'm very proud of where this one's at. Opening with a future Earth society, we watch as a young Eobard Thawne looks up to the past heroes of legend, specifically the Flashes, Barry Allen and Wally West. He tries to work hard and study and work at the Flash Museum, though he decides that it would be easier to cheat and illegally take private information. His younger brother, a bratty cop, intervenes and tries to arrest him. While Eobard is prepped to be cuffed, a figure appears behind his brother, grabs him, and then his brother then ceases to exist, and then the figure is gone. Eobard uses this as an opportunity to continue with his plan. Similar occurrences with this figure happen not only with any rivals that stand in Eobard's way, but also his parents. He then rises in status after his admiration of the Flashes. While he rises in status, his colleagues nickname him Professor Zoom after his admiration of the Flashes. After some time studying the Speed Force, Eobard develops a theory in which he could take the uniform of Barry Allen and possibly derive some of the Speed Force from the old uniform and put it into himself. He combined this with the original origin as best he could, and miraculously, it worked. Eobard steals the Flash suit and begins his hand at hero work, though he only saves people from tragedies he causes, like pushing a woman off the building to heroically catch her at the bottom. He is eventually found out by law enforcement, and he decides that he should now try to go back in time to escape. He does this through the cosmic treadmill in the museum. We then go to present day, and Barry Allen is introduced by fighting a relatively minor fun villain. A villain like, say, Trickster, Weather Wizard, or Copperhead, while trying to finish the fight soon so he can make it to the grand opening of the Flash Museum. He casually defeats the villain and makes it just in time for the event with Wally and Iris, who is visibly pregnant and engaged to Barry. The grand opening goes smoothly. While celebrating, there is a disturbance in Central City. A man wearing a Flash suit appears out of nowhere in the museum. The public are clearly in belief that this is their Flash, though the mysterious man clarifies that he is the Flash of the 25th century. He then requests to speak with the Flashes of this time. Barry and Wally leave relatively quietly to put on their Flash suits. They wanted to enjoy the museum as themselves a little bit before actually planning to put on the suits and appear as the Flash, so the suits are conveniently nearby. Thawne sees them doing this and recognizes their faces. Now a trio of Flashes in the same room thank everyone for the flattering museum, then politely ask everyone to excuse them and leave them with their new guest. They take him to a Justice League safe house, not the Watchtower or Hall of Justice. Thawne introduces himself as a speedster of the future, conveniently leaving out the crimes he caused, and comes living proof to Barry after a couple of tests to prove that he is from the future, that time travel is practically possible. Thawne then explains that he would love to exchange notes with these two, and which Barry and Wally agree. The three of them then decide to go on patrol together over the next period of the movie, where Thawne shares what he knows of time travel and the Speed Force. While time and time again, Thawne needlessly and recklessly hurts innocent people, and the only time he ever even looks like he's saving somebody is from a crime he caused. Barry becomes incredibly upset with Thawne over this and says that he should take a break. Thawne, incredibly unstable and upset, returns to the Flash Museum. While at the Flash Museum, Thawne finds old exhibits that were not around in the future, and one in particular, which were events from Justice League Eternal. He learns there was a species that went by the name of Zoom. Connecting the dots from his past in the future and the past that he never knew about, Thawne realizes that he is one of Flash's villains. Thawne, enraged and going insane, finds Barry and Wally while they're at home with Iris and interrupts their dinner, berates Barry and Wally while they are understandably confused, and in his delirium, Thawne develops the reverse Speed Force, and his Flash suit is altered into the same one that Barry saw Zoom wear during the events of Justice League Eternal, Red Lightning and all. Zoom tries to kill Barry Allen using the element of surprise, and as he's choking Barry, Thawne begins to fade away, sort of Back to the Future-esque. After Barry regains control of his breathing, and Wally makes sure that Iris is safe, Thawne figures that he cannot kill Barry or Wally because it was directly because of them that he became the Flash and time travel to begin with. Thawne then vows then and there to make their lives a living hell, starting with a very special someone. Zoom then runs into the past with Barry and Wally following him. Zoom ends up in Barry's childhood home, and we find out here that it was Thawne who killed Barry's mother. After we see Zoom kill her, he exclaims that he isn't done yet, that there was a better target for him under his nose all along. Barry says goodbye to his lifeless mother, and we see our duo chase after Zoom. We see Henry Allen return home and Barry come down the stairs, seeing his dad crying next to their dead mother/wife. Cutting back to the present, we see that Eobard's next target is Iris. Seeing this, our duo's familial protective instincts kick in, and they immediately separate Zoom from Iris, and then trap him in a vortex of the Speed Force. This causes him to rip apart piece by piece until he is completely one with the Speed Force. And after everyone calms down as Iris is safe, they all share a hug. Suddenly, Iris cries out in pain as her water breaks. Changing out of their Flash suits, Barry and Wally rush Iris to the hospital where she gives birth to a son. Bartholomew Wally West Allen II, or as they call him, Bart, who will of course go on to become Impulse. In the post-credits, we find out that Thawne was, yes, ripped apart physically in the home of Barry and Wally and Iris, but he was just deeply enveloped inside of the Speed Force, outside time and space. You watch him rematerialize in 2021, where he is then recruited by Vandal Savage for the events that we see in Justice League Eternal. To kickstart this current year, 2024, I have Hellblazer. A monologue of the history of how magic came to Earth and the story of the Lords of Order is given about Hecate, the Upside Down Man, and even a version of Dr. Fate, one of the founders of the Lords of Order, which leads to how magic is studied by various cults like the Cult of the Cold Flame, where we see a young, late teens, John Constantine and Zatanna Zatara studying under a man named Nick Necro as his best students. Zatanna is inspired by the stories of Hecate before turning into a creature known as the Crone, and Constantine is more inspired by growing strength and Necro himself. We get a very brief history of them both and how they get there, but the cult is broken up and disbanded, leaving Zatanna and Constantine fending for themselves and protecting each other. Though this leads to the stubbornness of Constantine to drive the couple apart, this splits leaves Constantine and to start drinking heavily and using drugs. Although I don't talk about ratings a lot with these movies like PG-13 or R, I would, if there's any movie or any series in this universe that I think could get R ratings, I think it'd be like Suicide Squad, and particularly any project with John Constantine, just because of the subject material in these movies. And years later, Hecate / the Crone again is the evil name for Hecate, as they are one and the same, attacks Necro to steal his life force. However, before he dies, he sends a message to Zatanna. Knowing the myth and legend of Hecate and the Upside Down Man, she immediately tries to get a hold of Constantine, who is heavily inebriated. Though the next quarter to third or so of the movie, it shows how the duo can still function while bickering, and with Constantine only about half helpful due to his drug use. For the final battle, it starts with our duo against Hecate, and the battle progresses. The Upside Down Man slowly starts ripping away into their realm. Ironically, Constantine's drug use ends up being their saving grace, as he can think outside of the box use of conventional magic and threw together some fun magical BS that he typically does for one final battle that Zatanna doesn't believe will work in the slightest. Although the spell doesn't work as intended, it does throw off Hecate/the Crone enough to be defeated by the duo, severing Hecate's connection with the Upside Down Man long enough for her to break free of his control. This is done by banishing the Upside Down Man to his realm known as the Other Place. Again, these are kind of the dumbest names, but trust me, just looking at pictures of this guy, this is going to be a creepy freaking movie. This is not a perfect ending, as Hecate drops dead since her body has such connection with the dark magic that killed her. So, although the Upside Down Man was defeated through his puppet, Hecate was the real unfortunate soul, and the loss is felt by our heroic duo, especially Zatanna. Now, I'm kind of making this post-credit scene up because I didn't have one written for this movie, but it would also be known that Wonder Woman does learn of the death of Hecate and then is made more aware of Constantine and Zatanna, and she would be talking to other characters in the Justice League potentially. If I had to pick only one, I'd say Martian Manhunter. Next is Shazam 2. And with opening up with a general history of Mr. Mind leaving Venus, exploring the galaxy, and eventually coming to Earth, during his journey we also see him meeting Circe, and starts with giving her power since she is on Sorka and needs help to escape back to Earth. After we get a bit of catch up with the Marvel family and how they've been doing, we see Mr. Mind meeting with Dr. Sivana in prison, which is the post-credit scene of Shazam 1. And promises that he can give him magic. Though this is by Mr. Mind potentially planting a bug that will temporarily give Sivana magic, but will slowly siphon the power to himself, like fattening him up to eat him. Now, for those of you who might be wondering about timeline, the post-credit scene of Shazam 1 is in the future. So you're actually seeing a scene from Shazam 2, not immediately after Shazam 1. There is some time in between the end of Shazam 1 and the post-credit scene where Mr. Mind, talks to Dr. Sivana. The Marvel family then take down Sivana again, though with a few other villains like Cheetah, Malafak, and Circe, as Mr. Mind has met with them as well and set them up to lose their abilities. The Marvel family then get information from Sivana and those other now weakened villains, and they inform them that Mr. Mind has done, all of this to them, and he needs to be destroyed. The movie then ends with a massive showdown while Mr. Mind has grown physically to the size of a kaiju, Godzilla-esque beast, and attempts to consume the world to grow his power even further. The death of Mr. Mind then releases the powerful wave of energy across the world, and we see in the post-credit scenes that this wave restores the powers to the depowered villains. And we find out that the 7 deadly sins were connected to a being known as Trigon. And now the movie that we'd get around this time, or at least the time I'm recording this, if the universe were actually real. And that is Nightwing 2. Starting off, Mark Desmond is a chemist working for Wayne Enterprises and is working on a project to save his brother Roland, who was just beaten up by Nightwing some time ago in a battle. This, of course, being the end of the first Nightwing movie. He works with a good heart, though he is forced to help him because of the other members in the gang that he was in, or mob, excuse me. While in Bloodhaven, Dick Grayson has gotten a job as a bartender and is serving his bar when a woman bursts into the building. The woman is completely costumed up, and she's armed with various weapons, wearing a mask. And she explains that she is looking for a man who was supposed to, she's looking for a man who she was supposed to turn in for a reward who wasn't where he was supposed to be. Dick calmly informs her that there is no such man here at the bar and that she should leave. After ignoring him for a while, intimidating other guests, she eventually leaves. This is a lot like that scene in Deadpool, the first one, where Francis and Angel show up to the bar and intimidate all of the guests. Dick sneakily leaves a tracker on her to find out where she is going, and it turns out she's going to an embassy. She goes in and meets with a man by the name of Bivens. This is her butler. Her name is revealed to be Lady Vic, and the man she's looking for is a man named Marin, a mob boss who had never paid her for a hit. Eventually, we see Nightwing and Lady Vic meet up in a battle, where Vic is wondering who he is, while Nightwing is trying to let her know that she won't find out what she's looking for. After some amount of light flirting between the two, they do end up fighting on a rooftop, which just so happens to be the same building that Mark Desmond is working in with his brother. The two crash through a window, chemicals get knocked all over the place, landing on Roland, causing him to convulse and grow exponentially. Quickly, Roland wakes up and, while in a fit of freaking out, causes him to accidentally hit and kill his brother instantly. He looks over at his lifeless family on the floor and sees Lady Vic and Nightwing fighting, and putting the dots together, Roland believes this to be their fault. After Roland starts causing mayhem, Nightwing thinks quickly and drops a smoke pellet and uses this to escape and fight another day. Vic starts sweet-talking Blockbuster and tries to get him on her side. She, of course, tells Blockbuster that the other man in the room was named as Nightwing, and that he's the one who engaged her in battle, which wouldn't be true, and is the cause of death for his now dead brother. The two join forces and take on Nightwing as a team. They come up with a plan that involves Roland taking over and leading his mob, which used to be Tony Zuko's mob. And Vic gets rewarded for helping keeping Nightwing away. Nightwing is on top of a building and sees that they have teamed up. Knowing that he is unable to beat him on his own, he goes to Alfred to see if Alfred can help him. Alfred hooks him up with some similar tech that we see in Batman's cowl, and this is actually very similar technology that we see in The Dark Knight specifically. At the end of the movie with that sonar business that Christian Bale's Batman was using. Instead of like a sonar thing, what this would be is essentially a lot of cameras, and Nightwing will be able to control all this through his mask. With this, of course, a lot of sticky cameras that he can set up on the walls, and this leads to the final battle between Nightwing, Vic, and Blockbuster. Through the recon set up by the heroes and Dick's stealth skills, he can lure out Vic and take her on one-on-one, and after defeating her, he goes into the main room to take on the new head of the Bloodhaven mob, Blockbuster. Using his superior speed and agility, Nightwing can subdue Blockbuster long enough until Blockbuster can be put behind bars alongside Lady Vic. So to kickstart 2025, there's Black Adam. This is going to be very different from the Dwayne Johnson Black Adam movie. I wrote this, I think at the time we only had the casting confirmed that Dwayne Johnson was going to play Black Adam. So this is going to be a very different movie. Teth Adam and his brother Aman and Adrianna Tomez, Teth's love, are all slaves in Kahndaq, an ancient Egyptian city. The three return to their family. Teth and Aman's family took in Adrianna. But when they enter the home, everyone is dead. Since they have literally nothing left for them in Kahndaq, they attempt an escape. During this escape, Teth gets wounded by Khandakian guards. Aman runs to his aid while Adrianna is captured to be a maiden for the pharaoh. While Aman tries helping Teth to his feet, they see Adrianna being taken away, but before they can start chasing after her, they find themselves in a mysterious place. This is them being teleported to the Rock of Eternity. A man comes out of the shadows and explains to Aman that he is of pure heart and that he would like to bestow a power upon him for his good deeds. Driven to help save Adrianna and Teth, Aman says that he will only accept the power if Teth is healed, and that they are brought back to Kahndaq to save Adrianna. The wizards oblige and grant Aman the power, and another wizard, being Jimon Honsu's Shazam, offered to grant Teth the power as well, since that is what is needed for him to properly heal. Now, back in Kahndaq, the duo makes a plan to try to save Adrianna. Well, Aman does try to make a plan, but Teth is adamant that a plan is a waste of time and storms the gate of the pharaoh's palace. After searching through the palace, they find Adrianna, and she saves Teth, quickly hugging each other while a squad of guards show up. Aman attempts to tell Teth that they should just leave with the power that they have, fly away, and just live peacefully. But Teth, fueled by rage and anger, lashes out against the guards, and to the shock of his friends, Aman tries to hold Teth back. However, Teth reacts by slicing one of Aman's eyes. In a state of shock, Adrianna leaves with Aman, leaving Teth at the palace surrounded by guards. Teth then takes control over Kahndaq by killing the pharaoh and using his power to intimidate the guards to obey him. The guards and Khandakians dub him Black Adam. Teth uses this name to strike fear in the hearts of his enemies, and his first command is that the guards track down Aman and Adrianna. After some time searching, they are quietly brought back to the temple so as not to stir up any unnecessary bloodshed. After trying peaceful negotiations, Adam asks Adrianna if she still loves him. She says that she does not know, but would be with him if he were to drop all this power. Adam contemplates the suggestion, but refuses to give it up since they could live in the palace and rule over Kahndaq instead of living in fear of it. Adrianna is confused at the state of her once lover, while Aman steps in to tell Adam that he is out of line with his thinking. The argument leads the two brothers to fight to the death, Aman sacrificing himself to try to kill Adam. However, he fails. Adam returns to the palace and tries to take Adrianna, and while this happens, they find themselves brought back to the Rock of Eternity. The wizard and Adam quickly get into a fight after a quick argument about Adam getting his power. Adam is easily winning, however, in this fight, Adrianna is hit in the crossfire, causing Adam to lose focus. This allows the wizard to banish him into the far cosmos. The wizard then tries healing Adrianna, though she will not wake up. As to respect her, she is kept buried in the tombs of Kahndaq in a beautiful resting place. Not a coffin, since she is essentially in a massive coma. She will not age until she is awoken. We see Adam awake in the post-credit scenes in the cosmos many years later and begin searching for his way back to Earth, specifically for Adrianna. And now we have the Titans. After Dick Grayson left the team to go on his journey of self-discovery, which of course leads him to becoming Nightwing, the team was vulnerable without their leader. Trigon takes Raven after the team is broken up, and Silas Stone takes Cyborg, Silas Stone is a bit more villainous in this incarnation. He's obsessed with removing all the cybernetic components that create Cyborg to make him normal again. And so this only leaves Starfire and Beast Boy. The two understand that they're not smart enough to track someone like Silas Stone, nor are they powerful enough to defeat Trigon, and not only them, but no one can get a hold of Dick Grayson right now. So they decide to continue being heroes and really pick their battles and try to recruit new members so they can save their friends. And unfortunately, they only really get one candidate, and it's right before the events of the movie. That is Virgil Hawkins' Static Shock. The story really starts when Dick and Corey run into each other on a mission in Bloodhaven, and Corey is able to tell Dick everything that had just happened. For those who don't know, Starfire's real name is Coriander, or Corey for short. And so Dick gets Tim Drake, and the five go to save Cyborg from his father. After saving Cyborg, the team now consists of Cyborg, Dick Grayson, Tim Drake, Starfire, Beast Boy, and Static Shock, and they go to get a couple new members, Wally West and Jackson Hyde. Their new mission? Save Raven from her evil, demonic father, Trigon. Trigon is extremely powerful, however, the team doesn't need to be powerful enough to defeat him, they just need to be powerful enough to break his hold of Raven. And so once they do this, Raven can then imprison him in the ruby in her forehead. After doing this, they return to the tower, and now we have the resolution of the movie. Tim is talking with Dick Grayson about how Dick is going to lead the team and look after Bloodhaven at the same time, and Dick Grayson responds simply with, "I'm not. Tim, I brought you here because you're going to lead the Teen Titans, and I am just going to be a member of the Titans. Starfire and Beast Boy, since they were running the whole show, they're the heart and soul of this. They're going to lead the Titans, and they're going to help lead you and teach you how to be heroes as well." And so the way this is all going to work with the Justice League is the Teen Titans will be a group of young, not immature, but underdeveloped heroes who need extra time. It's going to be like, a JV team, so to speak. They're going to get some missions. They're going to be able to get their feet wet, work with the team, develop their powers safely with other heroes. And they're going to be led by the grown-up Titans, which are made up of Dick Grayson as Nightwing, Raven, Starfire, Beast Boy, and Cyborg. The current Teen Titans, and this is going to be a revolving door of members, as of right now, are Tim Drake as Robin. Then you have Jackson Hyde as Aqualad. Then you have Wally West as Flash, or Kid Flash, whichever one you want to call him. And Virgil Hawkins as Static Shock. And so once they're done being Teen Titans, once they really graduate, they can either become Titans or go off to be members of the Justice League. And then we have one post-credit scene of this movie. That is Raven being approached by a man with a thick English accent, which is, of course, John Constantine, asking her for help with a particular situation. This will be a scene stripped from our very next movie. Now, to close out Phase 3, we have Justice League Dark, an entirely new team consisting of Constantine, Zatanna, Madame Xanadu, Shade the Changing Man, Deadman, and Raven. Opening with what seems like a chase, we see June Moon clutching her head and body as she sprints through a Louisianian bayou towards a shady individual. Now, this is not a play on words, it's not Shade the Changing Man. Again, just coincidence. We only ever see June as she asks if the mysterious individual can help her. With a non-verbal affirmation, we hear some quiet, indistinct mumbling. Then we see as Moon and Enchantress are separated from each other. Enchantress quickly then runs away, and June then tries to begin living a normal life again. This is all until Enchantress begins to go crazy and realize that she needs a human host if she plans to live much longer. She finds innocent women and attempts to steal their life force, though this just kills her victims and Enchantress gets nothing out of it. She then realizes that she needs June Moon. During this rampage, Madame Xanadu begins to investigate and discover Enchantress's mission before barely escaping with her own life. To help throw off Enchantress, Xanadu begins to create multiple duplicates of Moon across the world. These duplicates are seen by June on the news, all dying in horrible deaths, all of which of course caused by Enchantress, and believes that there could still be a piece of Enchantress still inside of her, and so she visits somebody who was recruited for the Suicide Squad but was never truly brought onto the team because Waller never found a way to control him. This is Boston Brand, Deadman. The Justice League are eventually called into a battle with Enchantress in the middle of a city as Enchantress is fed up with the games, referring to her own duplicates, and begins destroying city after city, until the real June Moon is given up. The JLA are easily dispatched by Enchantress, as they are not nearly powerful enough to match her magic. This confirms to Xanadu that a new team would need to be formed to defeat the Enchantress. She begins to build this team starting with Shade the Changing Man, and instructs him to meet her in the House of Mystery. Meanwhile, Constantine and Zatanna, still working together, receive a message from the Martian Manhunter to meet them in the Hall of Justice to educate the League on magic after their battle with the Enchantress. The heroes conclude that the League does not have the capability to defeat someone like the Enchantress, while just Constantine and Zatanna do not have the ability even together to defeat her by themselves. At this moment, Zatanna falls through a portal from the floor, which takes her to Shade the Changing Man, and Constantine is left alone with the League, with an opportunity for a witty one-liner or two. Constantine is directed by Batman to contact Nightwing and the Titans to ask if Raven is available for help, as she is a human-demon hybrid and could really help this team. When June meets with Deadman, she asks him to possess her and check if Enchantress is still somehow inside of her. Deadman obliges and confirms to June that Enchantress is indeed no longer a part of her. Then the two get the knock on the door. This is Enchantress, who is relieved to finally find the real June, and Deadman would do the best he can to help protect June, but he ultimately fails due to Shade bringing in himself and Zatanna to then try to help, and the three really just kind of step on each other's toes. After the three compare notes and return to contact Madame Xanadu at the House of Mystery, Constantine and Raven, after that recruiting scene in Titans, track down Enchantress after she takes June and head to her source of power. So, to kind of recap, the characters of Deadman, Shade the Changing Man, and Zatanna are meeting with Madame Xanadu, Constantine and Raven going to find Enchantress and June Moon. Constantine and Raven, still unsure of Zatanna's whereabouts, and without the time to properly search for her, begin the events of the climax. They enter a spooky shack in a Louisianian bayou where June is being held by Enchantress. All the two are capable of is to find June and perform a protection circle around where Enchantress cannot hurt them. But now they cannot fight back. Only buy time for Zatanna to come and try to help, which of course Zatanna has the rest of what would be the JLD. Constantine and June begin to talk where June explains that Enchantress, wants to absorb her life and become able to live on her own and pervert humanity and Earth into her slaves. Kind of like how she did in Suicide Squad from 2016. Constantine inquires why this had never happened before, and June explains that she was able to hold her back for all of these years, but it nearly drove her crazy. Constantine replies detailing that she has two options. Live by herself for the rest of her life, which, with Enchantress being the way she is, wouldn't be for very long. or to re-merge with Enchantress and continue to hold her evil at bay, at the cost of her own sanity. Raven then empathizes with June and explains to her situation with Trigon, that she is forced to do the same thing or else he would conquer Earth through her. Zatanna, Shade, and Deadman arrive and pull the three out of danger inside of the shack, and the team begins to attempt to fight Enchantress, although Enchantress puts a magical rope around June's neck, giving the team the ultimatum that if they want to kill her, then they would also have to kill June, and all of their effort would be in vain. June then takes control of the situation by forcibly re-merging herself with Enchantress. After all this happens, June is lying on the ground unconscious. Deadman confirms that the team that she is alive and that Enchantress is inside of her. Then Shade teleports them all back to the House of Mystery to help June. So you whiny baby. After all this happens, June is lying on the ground unconscious. Deadman confirms to the team that she is alive and Enchantress is still inside of her. Shade then teleports them all back to the House of Mystery to try to help June. Once she awakens, Deadman confirms to her that Enchantress and her are one again. Raven consoles June for this decision, and the two bond over their similar fates. Constantine then offers a magical concoction that would help temporarily take the edge off if the insanity were to return. And just as all seems well, June recognizes Xanadu as the mysterious individual from the beginning of the movie. It reveals that it was Xanadu who was the cause of all this in the first place. The team, obviously upset by this revelation, decide that they should all go their separate ways and focus on helping people on their own again. Though, we find out in the post-credit scenes that this team all get nightmares, except Deadman, who gets visions because, well, Deadman doesn't really sleep, about an impending doom and something about the wrath of God. To start Phase 4 in 2026, there is a mini-series about the ancient Kryptonians called The Fall of Krypton. When the ancient Kryptonians were thriving in their utopia, they had been revered on their planet for their explorations. However, while exploring, they caused many civilizations to die from disease and conquest. This got the attention of leader of the Black Lanterns, Nekron. Nekron then would go to Krypton and wage war against the Kryptonians to show them who the true god of death is. The Kryptonians were barely able to hold off the onslaught of Black Lanterns and defeat Nekron with the finishing blow to send them retreating, coming from breaking off the head of his staff. The Kryptonians decided to step aside from exploring and put all their resources into building up their planet and their military defense in case of another invasion. To ensure this does happen, they create a formula and imprint it on the head of the staff of Nekron to form the Codex, which is that little skull from Man of Steel. And they use this to ensure that all Kryptonian life from this point forward would be born with a specific purpose and would strengthen the planet's chance of survival against any other potential threats the universe could throw at them. However, unbeknownst to them, they also created the cause of the death for the planets. The combination of their new artificial life and Nekron's staff slowly poisons the planet. This would later be the cause of the events that we see in future projects. Well, future in terms of timeline, like Man of Steel and a later Phase 4 project. Next up is Green Lantern Krona. And a Green Lantern of Sector 2814 dies of old age and his ring is sent off to search for its new user. Since there has been a recent success with human lanterns, the ring is sent to Earth and finds John Stewart, U.S. Marine who was discharged and court-martialed for disobeying a direct order that would have killed innocents in the line of duty. Stewart is brought to Oa to train and become a Green Lantern, and also he rejects the idea of wearing those domino masks. He just wears, the emissive eyes, if you will. And during the training, there are multiple other lanterns who are growing older at an accelerated rate and dying. Concerned, Hal and Kilowog question the Guardians about what could be going on. Their best solution is the exiled Guardian, Krona. He was recently detected by the Guardians to be near the Dead Zone, in a forbidden place where most of the universe, a forbidden place to most of the universe due to an ancient threat. Stewart overhears this conversation and is told later to stay behind and complete his training while Hal, Kilowog, and multiple other lanterns go for reconnaissance. Stewart, using his military knowledge and training, escapes Oa and follows the other lanterns to the Dead Zone. While they're out, they discover Krona, more powerful than described. Krona looks upon the lanterns and laughs at how few there are, and begins to siphon energy from them one by one as the battle ensues, looking just like what happened to the other citizens and the other lanterns, just faster. Stewart watches in awe at the new type of warfare he is witnessing, and however he quickly intervenes and pitches into the battle. Hal and Kilowog order a retreat and are able to escape with Stewart and other two nameless lanterns. Doesn't really matter who they are, they're just other random survivors. Immediately returning to Oa, the three lanterns, Kilowog, Jordan, and Stewart, meet with the Guardians again. It is concluded that Krona met with a being known as Necron, and has apparently worked out an agreement that would make the two of them more powerful. Stewart is scolded for leaving training early, but he was able to convince the Guardians to forgo the rest of his training for the moment to aid the Lanterns in fighting Krona. After a regrouping session on Oa, more Lanterns are dropping across the universe to the same circumstances. What is left of the Green Lantern Corps is left to do battle with Krona. But before they leave, Hal goes to say goodbye to his now girlfriend, Carol Ferris, and she appears to be distraught when Hal leaves. This final battle has the rest of the Green Lantern Corps going up against Krona. Krona quickly gets the upper hand, but is outnumbered by the Lanterns. Right when Krona seems like he's about to win, there's a giant bolt of pink energy that strikes him. Hal and John look behind them and see a woman surrounded by a pink aura. It is Carol Ferris. She turns the tide in the battle and helps take down Krona, and after the battle, while on Oa, she explains the big secret to Hal, that she also has abilities similar to a Green Lantern. However, instead of being powered by will, she is powered by love. And she is from a corps called the Star Sapphires of Love. To close out 2026, Superman Heart of Steel. After the wake of what happened to the Justice League in Justice League Dark and Batman Doom, the Justice League is not doing too terribly well. Luthor uses this knowledge that he's gained from Batman's contingencies and Red Hood's plan from Batman Doom, and stockpiles kryptonite to take one last attempt at Superman's life. Since Batman left the Justice League, he used this timing as his opportunity to vanquish his nemesis. Lex Luthor continues the ongoing investigation of Superman's true identity and puts the final pieces of the puzzle together to discover that he is Clark Kent. After putting all his resources together, which includes a meeting with Metallo, who Luthor kills only to salvage the original suit intended for John Corbin and upgrade it for himself. The final battle between the iconic hero and villain starts with Luthor threatening Clark's son, who has been born since the last Superman movie, and the battle ends with a self-sacrifice to kill Superman from Lex, ending in his own death, and Superman surviving the blast barely. Martian Manhunter then shows up and takes Superman's body away to the Watchtower and be closer to the sun so he can recover from the blast. Superman is effectively put in a mini coma from this, by the way. And in the post-credit scenes, as he was unconscious for months, Superman wakes up from the hospital wing from the Watchtower and witnesses the coming of Darkseid. To start out 2027, Shazam 3. Black Adam arrives on Earth in shock of how much has changed, and he immediately calls out for the Wizard Shazam, claiming that their fight has yet to finish. And then we see Darla and Eugene, and they typically like exploring the Rock of Eternity, but they're running out of places to explore. The one place they have yet to see being behind a big door that is magically sealed that they cannot find the key for. Billy hears a cry for Shazam and goes for help, finding a mysterious man wearing a very familiar suit, black with a big lightning bolt across his chest. And after bringing him to the Rock of Eternity, since he figures he could join the team and be a hero, Adam goes along with us for a time. He then gets back to the Rock of Eternity and immediately looks for Adrianna and the Wizard Shazam. Adam sneaks back into the rock and investigates the locked room and finds Adrianna's body. She is woken by his presence and is in complete shock. After some time, the family shows back up, and Adam, believing that it was Shazam / Billy who kidnapped Adrianna, goes into a fit of rage, claiming that since he cannot kill the Wizard Shazam, he deems Billy enough to suffice. And in this battle between the Marvel family and Black Adam, Mary Marvel is killed, the eldest sister. The rest of the team hold off long enough against Black Adam, long enough to start grieving and learn from the woman that her name was Adrianna and that the amulet that she is wearing is known as the Amulet of Isis. In her magically induced coma, this amulet was able to keep her alive and give her her own abilities. They're not related to the Wizard's Shazam, if you will, but it does give her extra abilities. And the movie then ends with the rest of the Marvel family with Adrianna, who then defeat Black Adam, and they imprison him powerless in the Rock of Eternity, and Isis becomes the X Factor in defeating Adam with self-sacrifice. During the post-credit scenes, Billy sees the forces of Darkseid arrive while at Mary's funeral. Next up is Supergirl. Back on Krypton, we see a civilization thriving. Jor-El, Zor-El, and General Zod as the two most respected members of the Kryptonian Council and leader of the Kryptonian army. Zor-El is also a family man and brother to Jor-El, father to a young, brilliant daughter, Kara. An important detail about Kryptonians is that due to their codex artificially creating the population, everyone at birth is given a purpose or a role, and Kara's is to protect Kryptonian culture. With this, she works as a Kryptonian museum curator. After Brainiac threatens the people of Kandor into sacrificing the city for the sake of his collection, Kara wants to help in any/every way she possibly can, though her family disagrees because of her age and because of a plan that they have. They demand that she stay out of this if they want to protect her, and she disobeys her family's orders and goes to help behind their back. This ultimately puts her in a Kryptonian prison, where she meets Lobo, who is a Sarnian outlaw also imprisoned there, of course, and while they're behind bars, and periodically throughout the movie, her family meets to discuss her developing purpose. True, her purpose is to protect Kryptonian culture. The family also could predict the heat death of the planet, and without Brainiac, this is supposed to be within about 10 to 12 years or so, but if Kandor is taken, it's gonna be a lot quicker. While back in the prison, Kara and Lobo start realizing that their goals are aligning. Lobo wants to help because Brainiac already took Sarnia for his collection, and Lobo wants vengeance. And so they end up breaking out of prison, finding Lobo's cosmic cycle, and ride to face off against Brainiac while escaping Kryptonian police. While aboard the Brainiac ship, Kara and Lobo are quickly defeated by Brainiac and are sent to live in the living exhibit on his ship. And while all this happens, Brainiac is stealing the city of Kandor. And this event dooms the death of Krypton and hastens it from, again, about 10-12 years to less than 1 day. And all this happens just before the events of Man of Steel, which would take place on Kryptonopolis, not Kandor. The Council of Krypton escapes Kandor for Kryptonopolis for a temporary safety from Brainiac's invasion. And this way, Kandor gets taken, and the events of Man of Steel still happen as normal, as we see in the beginning of the movie. Before the death of Krypton, Kara's family from Argo City, again, a third Kryptonian city, send a final one-way message out to Kara, a message that informs Kara about the death of Krypton and conveys their love for her and how proud they are of her, as well as her purpose to protect her cousin, Kal-El, who was just shot into space towards planet Earth. This message will be cut off by the planet's destruction. Using her intelligence and Lobo's strength and experience, the two break out of Brainiac's ship by blowing up part of it. With nowhere to go, Kara asks Lobo if he can take her to Earth, and he explains that it would be a long journey, and Kara replies with, "All I need is time and to be with my family, and the only hope I have is to head towards Earth." In the post-credit scenes, we get two of them. The first one is on their way to Earth. Kara and Lobo are discovered by an Apocalyptian battleship. Here, they are taken and boom-tubed to Apocalypse. And then in the second post-credit scene, Kara is taken to be put into the orphanage by Desaad to be looked after by Granny Goodness, when he notices that she is Kryptonian and is taken directly to Darkseid. Using her DNA, Desaad then heads to the ship that Kara used and starts the creation of the abomination Doomsday. And now, Justice League Apocalypse, Part 1 of a 3-part finale. This movie opens with Martian Manhunter, Shazam, and Superman fighting hordes of parademons just outside the Watchtower, and suddenly, all the parademons start retreating to a nearby troop carrier spaceship, then just start hovering around it. The three decide to call a meeting to the Watchtower / Hall of Justice to decide what to do next. As this happens, Steppenwolf appears in Themyscira and steals the Amazonian Mother Box. This movie will be taking a lot of inspiration from Zack Snyder's Justice League. However, in this sequence, Queen Hippolyta perishes. The Amazonians still shoot their warning arrow, and it appears on the news just like the League normally does, and they see the report. This is where Wonder Woman, while in the meeting in the Hall of Justice, gives her history lesson, similar to the Snyder Cuts, about Darkseid and other ancient villains. Hal and Jon Stewart decide to look for Sinestro, as his connection with fear may be a connection to the parademons. Steppenwolf then interrogates the Atlanteans about the location of their mother box. While in Atlantis, Steppenwolf kills Queen Atlanna and kidnaps Mira and Aqualad while taking the mother box while trying to defend it. While all of this is happening, the parademons start kidnapping humans and taking them underneath Gotham Harbor. The heroes try to catch up to Steppenwolf and attempt to cut him off here while he is under the harbor. And so this can be very similar to the Snyder Cut, and acknowledging the difference here where Batman is not a member of my Justice League. Since this is in Gotham Harbor, Batman would be utilized here. Hal and Stewart find Sinestro and discover that the Yellow Lanterns have been vastly diminished. Sinestro then explains that after the events of Justice League 1, and he and the other Yellow Lanterns started to try and start their own world like on Oa, and while recruiting, Darkseid had invaded the world that they were on. Arkilla was able to sacrifice himself to save Sinestro, and while mourning his friend, this starts a lingering thought in Sinestro's mind about redemption. Sinestro agrees to help Hal and Jon fight Darkseid/Steppenwolf. Back to Steppenwolf interrogating prisoners, one finally fesses up. While all this happens, Cyborg and his father, who acts a bit more similar to the Snyder Cut version, he's starting to, redeem himself a little bit from his decisions and actions in the Titans movie. They race to get to the mother box, as Silas already knew where it was. Here we get the scene where Silas sacrifices himself to mark the mother box, and on another note, around the same time, Guy Gardner gets a notification on his ring. And for those of us who remember from Green Lantern Rage, he has been put in timeout all of this time. Suddenly, that is called off. He has been reactivated by the Guardians of the Universe. He looks outside from a pub at all these parademons, and a smile creeps upon his face. At this point, the Justice League/Titans team up with the Suicide Squad and other villains, as now a common enemy has presented themselves. Clark calls his family to check in on them while they're staying at the Kent farm with his mother. Bruce assures Clark that they'll be safe out there. They're in the middle of nowhere. They're going to be okay. Desaad travels down to Earth to transport the mother boxes back to Darkseid and relays instructions along with Doomsday to Steppenwolf to capture/kill anyone who comes looking for the boxes. This is where the final battle will begin. During this battle, two notable injuries occur. Aquaman will lose his left forearm, while Shazam will lose his right leg just below the knee. And then 4 deaths will be notable. Hal Jordan and Sinestro will be vaporized by Darkseid's Omega Beams after the injuries to Aquaman and Shazam. And then Wally West will be seen to be vaporized as well. Superman is killed classically between him and Doomsday, killing each other. As the battle winds down and the deaths/injuries, especially Superman's, Desaad and Granny Goodness boom tube down to start rounding up prisoners that Steppenwolf has been able to collect. The remaining heroes board a troop carrier that Batman has been building. Cyborg upgrades the ship to be able to handle space travel, and the team attempts a rescue mission. Though, once they leave the atmosphere, they see that ship boom tube away, and as if they don't feel defeated, a ship detaches from that ship before the boom tube and heads back down to Earth much faster than the team can follow them. And this is Darkseid returning to Earth with the mother boxes to form the Unity and perish all life on Earth. He then begins his search for the anti-life equation. In the post-credit scenes, we get 2 of them, the first of which we get to see a little bit of the orphanage on Apokolips, where the captured are being taken. This is where they will meet Lobo and another mysterious man who is chained up like the works is on this individual. And then we see another chamber filled with a deep red light. In the second post-credit scene, prior to the formation of the Unity, we see a creepy man talk to himself about an impending apocalypse and the coming of the god of death. Now, presumably, this would be about Darkseid, though I will explain here that it is actually William Hand referring to Necron. To open the final year of this saga, 2028, Blackest Night. William Hand opens with a monologue about his fascination with death throughout his life leading up to Necron choosing him as his herald before the Unity. After the prisoner ship boom tubes out of sight from the heroes at the end of Justice League 3 and the Unity is formed on Earth, the heroes need to gather themselves before making their next move. As the Unity was formed, Cyborg gets a vision on the history and true function of the mother boxes as quote-unquote change machines, and relays the information to the team. Organically and similarly to the Snyder Cut, the team figures out that with the mother box they would be able to revive Superman. They decide to go back to Earth and try to break the Unity. They cannot save their friends that were just taken, they have no idea where they went, but they might be able to help save the Earth. On returning to Earth, they find the world overrun with not just parademons, but also zombie-like humanoids, these of course being Black Lanterns. After all that has happened, it was suggested that Barry goes back in time to try to stop this all from even just happening in the first place and try to give them a second chance. Barry agrees without hesitation and runs back only to find himself unintentionally phasing through Darkseid through the Justice League 3 events. While the Unity forms, he can't do anything, and it's almost like he's just a phantom in the past. He then tries to go back and help Superman fight Doomsday, but the same thing just keeps happening. Every single time he tries to stop an event, he just phases through and nothing changes. He then goes through a point in time where he could find some answers to what keeps happening. One where Eobard Thawne happens to be imprisoned. Resident time travel expert Eobard Thawne. Eobard is only half surprised to see Barry and immediately recognizes that this is a Barry from the past. Barry questions how Eobard knows this and only is met with, "Oh, because in this time you are very much dead." Eobard follows up with an accurately guessing where Barry is from. Extreme circumstance that you seek my advice, not long after we met for the first time, so you still know very little about time travel. The scraped up suit and your malnutrition, it's likely out of your control. Darkseid just invaded, didn't he? Why can't I change the past? Why can't I stop him from in the first place? Eobard ponders for just a moment and answers with a maniacal smile on his face. Because there's nothing you can do. These are what we call fixed events, Barry. Events that directly lead to some point to where we are destined to do or be what we cannot change. Fate, Barry. That is what you're fighting here. I was fated to become Zoom, fated to go back to your time, and why I cannot kill you. I would be a walking paradox, so I opted for the next best thing, making your life a living hell. If you defeat Darkseid, it won't be because I helped you. I will only tell you this much now to watch you squirm. Consequences, Barry. Something I believe you know to know little about. You must live with the consequences of your act. And then, at this point, Barry cuts him off, running back to the present to cut off Thawne. Upon returning to his own time, Barry reports to the team of survivors that there is nothing time travel will be able to accomplish with this. Darkseid will need to defeat it in this time through the present. Darkseid and his team meet with this at the same time to discuss what level threat Nekron actually poses here. They decide that as long as Nekron is not after them, then he is only going to be help for Darkseid, as, well, Nekron's also going to be going after the Justice League. Blackhand meets with Nekron to discuss why he has returned in the first place, and that Nekron wants to get the head of his staff back. He had lost it in an ancient battle with Kryptonians. The heroes decide to split into two teams. One to destroy the Unity and gather a mother box, and the other team to find Clark's body. While all this happens, Darkseid searches for the surface of Earth for the anti-life equation and discovers almost all of it. All he needs now is the key to the loss of free will. The team of heroes that are searching for the Unity find it, but it is guarded by Steppenwolf. Steppenwolf kills Lady Vic before the rest of the team can take him down. As this fight starts, the teams looking for Superman's body begins the final battle with Nekron. The battle does not go well for the heroes in the beginning. The Black Hand finds Superman's body first, which will lead to some confusion as he begins to siphon out a skull from his body. This is the same codex from Man of Steel. Back at the Nekron battle, a white beam appears out of thin air, and out of it, a massive blast of bright white light. Then, out of the beam flies out Hal Jordan and Sinestro, now clad in white uniforms. With the help of the White Lanterns and the heroes, they turn the tide against Nekron, and Cyborg then sacrifices himself to destroy the Unity as Nekron is killed by the heroes. As the Black Hand is running back to what he hopes is an alive Nekron, he runs into Darkseid, who then steals the codex/skull/key to the anti-life equation and crushes the Black Hand's head. Now, in case I haven't mentioned it yet, the reason that the codex is needed for the anti-life equation. As I mentioned earlier in the Fall of Krypton show, The codex creating that artificiality with life was actually part of the anti-life equation. That is the loss of free will, the code to the loss of free will. The Kryptonians didn't have that. Their entire life was predetermined by this codex. So this codex is actually the missing key of the anti-life equation, and has been imprinted on Clark's DNA for the past, 40 some odd, 50 some odd years. That is why it is simultaneously the key to the anti-life equation, the codex, and the head of the staff of Necron. After the mother box is gathered, the Unity destroyed, and Superman's body has been recovered by the heroes, they then go through the process of using the mother box to revive Superman. After he wakes up and realizes and internalizes what has happened to himself and the world around him, Superman gets a look of pure terror on his face and immediately races towards Kansas. Xanadu then gets a premonition. Superman becoming controlled by the anti-life equation. Since, though the anti-life equation is a mathematical and not magic, her vision is vague, and this only just adds paranoia to the team. Darkseid sees him fly across the sky and follows him. Clark lands at the ruins of the Kent farm and searches the house for his family, eventually finding them in the tornado shelter, dead. As Clark mourns the death of his family and falls apart, you hear the equation being uttered behind Clark, and Darkseid lands behind him. Clark immediately begins attacking Darkseid, although the more Darkseid continues the equation, the more Clark slows his attacks as he begins to look more and more lifeless and hopeless. Once Darkseid is done with the equation, Clark is under full control of the anti-life equation and under control of Darkseid. Here we get 2 more post-credit scenes. On the Kent farm, after Darkseid controls Clark, Clark hears Martian Manhunter in his head telling him to meet with the heroes back at the Batcave. Martian Manhunter, of course, unknowing Clark is now under control of Darkseid. In the second post-credit scene, we see our captured heroes land on Apocalypse. And now to close 2028 and the entire saga, Justice League Omega. Movie opens right after Superman was revived from Blackest Night. We stay with the team after Clark is revived and he flies off to the Kent farm and then gets influenced by the anti-life equation. Batman assures the team that Clark will meet them back in the Batcave in time and tells Martian Manhunter to communicate with Clark's mind to tell him about the meeting them at the Batcave. We switch settings to Apocalypse and catch up with our captured heroes. We get a formal introduction to Granny Goodness and the orphanage. To show the purpose of the orphanage, Granny uses Captain Boomerang as an example. He has been clearly terrified and stressed more than the others, by the way, up to this point. She shoves him into a chamber and out he comes as a parademon. Shortly after the shock of Boomerang's transformation, the heroes are all put into a cell where they meet with Lobo, who is next to a man who is chained up much more than anyone else. This is secretly Mr. Miracle. Back on Earth, we follow the team making their way to the Batcave and begin discussing Darkseid. Shortly into this meeting, Superman appears and is clearly a bit off. Martian Manhunter attempts to get into his head, while Deadman attempts to possess Superman. Although it is discovered by Martian Manhunter, Raven, Deadman, that any sign of Clark is practically gone. And before they can properly warn anyone, Superman shoves his hand through the Joker's chest while firing heat vision at Enchantress. Finally, he then breaks Katana's katana out of her hand and then stabs her with it. Hal and Sinestro instantly bind Superman down while Batman and Martian Manhunter quickly organize Raven, Shazam, Constantine, and Enchantress to incapacitate Superman. Martian Manhunter is able to uses shapeshifting to distract Superman enough to allow the remaining heroes to escape through shades, teleporting them away. Other than Enchantress, who is too slow trying to get away from Superman's surprise attack, she passes. There are 3 deaths in this scene: the Joker, Katana, and Enchantress. Once safe from Superman, John Constantine, Shade the Changing Man, Raven, and Madame Xanadu begin an enchantment on the team to help shroud them from Darkseid and Superman. Back on Apocalypse, Lobo explains the situation that they are in. Beast Boy asks him how long he has been chained up here, and he replies, well, unsure. Darla asks him, while trying to be as close to Freddy as possible, has anyone been here longer than you? Lobo says that there are 2. One has been here as long as he has, though he hasn't seen her since they were captured and she's been locked away in that special red-lit room. And the other man who's been chained up here. I like to think that he were dead if it wasn't from just drinking the water that we're all given just to keep us barely alive. But we are the ones who haven't broken. I guess the value of a parademon is worth more than the weight of a corpse. Diablo and Harley talk about how much they missed Belle Reeve somehow. Then Wonder Woman, Freddy, and Jon Stewart try to inspire the team to escape. When Granny comes back, and she then takes Dr. Sivana and Ma'alafa'ak back to transform into parademons, as they were the next two to succumb to the torture of Apocalypse. The heroes don't start their escape until they know where to go. They find this out when Ma'alafa'ak is taken to be transformed. He communicates with the remaining heroes to head for the war room, though he and Sivana are too late for a rescue and become parademons. As the heroes are escaping the orphanage, Granny Goodness gets in their way and Diana steps aside to allow the rest to escape. Here we get a Wonder Woman Granny Goodness 1v1. Partway through that fight, Circe joins Diana and we get a 2v1 until Granny kills Circe, though this leaves Granny Goodness exposed for Wonder Woman to kill her. Along the way to the war room, Lobo finds Kara and saves her from the red room where she was being held. Diablo and Mirror Master then sacrifice themselves to a horde of parademons to allow the team to keep moving. It's going to be a really cliche, but at this point, but really cool hallway scene with those two characters. In the war room, Desaad is waiting for them. In the fight against Desaad, Pedro and Ocean Master both give their lives, and Lobo gets the killing blow on Desaad. I also said Darkseid there. Just as Desaad dies, the heroes try to get boom tubes to work. Hordes of parademons are coming after the heroes, and Mira, Starfire, and Freddy stay behind to give the rest of the team enough time to safely boom tube and destroy Apocalypse. There are 10 deaths in this scene. Boomerang, Sivana, and Ma'alafa'ak turn into parademons. Pedro and Ocean Master die battling Desaad. Circe dies battling Granny Goodness. And then Mira, Starfire, and Freddy all die to buy time for the boom tubes to work and to make sure Apocalypse is destroyed. We then go back on Earth. Bruce leads the team to his lake house. This is because it is where he has left his last piece of kryptonite that Clark had given him in Batman Doom. As the team try to understand what is happening, Martian Manhunter and Raven also explain Clark's lack of emotion and hope in his mind. A boom tube then appears by the lake house. The heroes get on guard until they see Wonder Woman and the rest of the captured heroes walk out. An immediate feeling of joy appears on Earth team's faces. Martian Manhunter and Raven quickly scan them and confirm that they are not like Clark, which leads the conversation about what has happened on both sides. Things like various character deaths, what happened to Clark, who Lobo, Mr. Miracle, and Supergirl / Kara Zor-El all are. While this happens, Kara begins to soak up the yellow sun. After exchanging information, including the anti-life equation, Mr. Miracle knows this since he and his people, the Genesians, the new Genesians, if you will, discovered the life equation. Darkseid inferred that if there was a life equation, then there must be an anti-life equation. The plan becomes to use Barry Allen and Martian Manhunter as bait for Superman to trap him in a room with the kryptonite shard, while Mr. Miracle can use the life equation while powered up by Hal and Sinestro, who are, well, white lanterns of life. So this will be a major blast of anti-life equation at Superman. Before Superman discovers where the heroes are, he meets with Darkseid about the plan to kill / control the heroes. Martian Manhunter calls Superman to the lake house and promises that they can help him break free of the anti-life equation. Superman blasts off out of anger and frustration, still the anti-life equation having its effect, and he blasts off towards the lake house. Darkseid follows behind. So it is noted that Darkseid follows considerably behind. Superman gets there well before Darkseid. The hero's plan eventually works with some clever improvising and adapting of the plan, and Clark is successfully cleansed of the anti-life equation after this, although he is unconscious. Darkseid makes his way to the lake house and begins the final battle against the heroes. Here we get to see multiple heroes' moments time to shine in these battles. This is very similar to the final Avengers Endgame battle. Partway through the fight, Eugene Marvel fires off a repulse at the same time as Darkseid is firing off his Omega beams, and this temporarily blinds him, stopping the beams. Batman notices this weakness and relays the information to the team, mainly by just relaying it to Martian Manhunter, who they can then telepathically relay this to the team. Killer Croc takes this and charges Darkseid, which ends in Croc being ripped apart by a horde of parademons. Shazam decides to sacrifice himself here before anyone can object, to allow himself to create an opening for someone else to kill Darkseid. He then lures hundreds of parademons far away from the battle, and the last we see of Billy is him painfully shouting, "Shazam!" as a lightning bolt fires off at him, this killing many, many parademons. Billy Batson is gone. At the same time, the blast is enough to wake Superman. Aquaman then takes this opportunity to attack Darkseid and stabs one of his eyes with the trident of Atlanna, and then he had replaced his other arm that he had lost with a hook. He then stabs Darkseid in his other eye with his hook. However, Darkseid fires his final Omega memes at Aquaman, killing him as well. Just as the Darkseid tries to gather himself after this attack, Jon Stewart, Hal Jordan, Sinestro, John Constantine, Raven, and all the others hold down Darkseid. Superman shows up and begins to fire an unhinged blast of heat vision at Darkseid. Shortly after this, Supergirl joins in. One by one, each other capable hero fires off their energy blasts and most powerful weapons and attacks at Darkseid, who then slowly starts disintegrating until he is finally no more. After recollecting themselves as the battle concludes, the team finally allows themselves to properly mourn the dead. The team begins discussing if it were even be possible to revive all of the dead civilians, mainly referring to Mr. Miracle and the new White Lanterns. Only one way is even potentially possible, though it is reported never been attempted. It would involve Hal and Sinestro meeting with the Entity, who is the leader of the White Lanterns, and pleading the case to revive the innocent lives of humanity. Hal and Sinestro make their way to the Entity, although the only way for the Entity to properly revive humanity and the life on Earth is that they would need to fuse with him. And everyone who had died on Earth during this war would not be able to be revived, as the weight of this power needs to be understood. Hal agrees, and him and Sinestro merge with the Entity, reviving all life on Earth. And this phase, the movie, the saga, ends with each of our survivors enjoying the company of their newly revived friends and family. Characters killed off planet that were not transformed into parademons also returned to life, as they were not on Earth nor killed during the final war, mainly that final battle. So that includes Circe, Mira, Freddy and Pedro Marvel, Starfire, El Diablo, Mirror Master, Ocean Master, and any other death that was caused by the Unity. There are no post-credit scenes, and our heroes enjoy a sunrise on a revived world. Thank you all so much for watching this video. This was by far my longest video I've ever made. And yes, Phase 5 is coming. I am working on it as well as the entirety of another saga right now. I don't have official release dates, though it is going to be here in due time. So, like I said before, thank you all so much for watching. If you made it to this point in the video, congrats. This is a bit of a marathon. This is originally 4 videos that were not short to begin with. So, I mean, I'm recording this after having edited everything but the finale. So, yeah, I already know this video is well over 2 hours. So, if you made it to the end, I highly suggest hitting that subscribe button, because you probably do like my content. So that would be a major, major help. And yeah, if you like this, be sure to click that button below and share with a friend. So I'm not going to keep you here any longer. Thank you all so much for watching. Have a very lovely day, and subscribe for Phase 5 coming soon.